Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, June 24th, 2013. Clerk Morgan, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Snobber.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Moore. Vice Mayor McKinney.
Here.
Mayor Hopewell.
Present. May we have a motion to excuse Commissioner Moore?
Support.
By Commissioner Anderson, supported by Commissioner Sanabro. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Good evening, everyone. I think we have a number of questions for the HR director the new HR director before we get moving. First, do you have anything you want to just tell us generally before we start asking questions, or do you want to dive into the question?
We can start talking about the questions right away. I did want to point out that we will have an hour presentation just to review the format. There will be a 10-minute presentation from the presenters, and then we'll have the rest of the time up to 1 hour to ask the questions and try to move things along here. There are a couple questions or at least one question anyway, that may or may not pertain to a couple of the presenters. Because if you look at question number 8, describe to us the process you used to vet the candidates who present to us. That was an issue for the commission with the last search process. So we included it on there. However, if you'll notice, there were 2 of the firms that presented proposals that I put in your mailboxes last week that thoroughly described the vetting process. So I don't know how much more you want to get into that with them. That would include SGR and Cullen Benzinger Associates. The other 2 you may want to delve into a little bit more. As Commissioner Anderson pointed out, you can ask questions that are not on this, preferably if they pertain to each of the 4 candidate firms. You ask them of all of them. If you miss one, there's no great deal about it, simply because this is not a personnel recruitment. You're searching out a firm. Questions from the commissioners?
I would call, but I think you guys can hear
Commissioner
Yes. Mayor, I just want to follow on Commissioner Anderson's, and I want to ask the Mayor for your guidance on this. We did the interviews of the individual candidates. You allowed each one of us to throw a couple of questions out that we would ask all of them, and you said, that way it kind of expedited things. And I just have like one question that's not on here. I don't think that I'd like to ask them all. Can I put that on the table now? That way,
Sure.
and that way I don't have to keep it. That way we ask them all. Is that okay?
Sure.
I don't know if you want to proceed that way, necessarily, but if you do, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. My issue, and I think they're covered in the bids, but I want to kind of make sure we get a clear answer from all 4 firms. On the last go-around, we were interviewing finalists for city manager, and the background checks had not even, I found that bothersome. I want to make sure when we get to the finalists of the individual candidates, that the background checks, and that includes criminal and everything, be completed and in hand before we do interviews. And I want to make sure I ask that question about those.
And Commissioner, I'm going to leave that question for, no matter where we are in the rotation, leave that question
Thank
for
you.
you to ask, since it is yours.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Anderson?
So I apologize in advance, but I did come up with several more questions that I thought about after I was going through this again last night. So maybe I'll run through this really quickly. Maybe we can decide whether we think it's already incorporated or not, or if we want to add those in some way. And Jerome, I appreciate your feedback also. So one of my questions was, to each firm, what separates you from the other firms that apply? What separates you from the other firms that apply? What is the unique? So here's an idea. Another one was going to ask about their budget. Is your budget sufficient to deploy the kind of strategic recruitment that might be necessary? In other words, I want people to think we are asking in advance. I'm not asking people to change their prices. I'm saying we're asking in advance. We are looking for a strategic recruitment process. Is that what you're prepared to do here? Another question I have is, what, in your opinion, is the few candidates outside of Michigan might have that the states have not been putting in this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What, in your opinion, is the few candidates for the city manager position outside of Michigan might have with the state's economic and political landscape.
Ask them to read candidates' minds. I don't know if that's.
The reason I think it's important is because we want to recruit somebody from outside of Michigan. I would hope that someone will be strategic and have some awareness about what are the hurdles that we're going to have to overcome, right, in order to be recruited. So I don't know if that's already mixed up at all. And I wasn't going to ask any of these until we got to the end and maybe they didn't someone answer. And the last one was, who will be the lead in the search here? This one we
That's
That
how
one
we do
that.
Is that in here?
And the last,
It's on the back?
it's on question 10.
There's 10 and 11 on the
Question
back.
11.
Ah, I missed that.
Any other ads?
The first three questions,
Oh, go
we
ahead.
really did not we incorporated the questions that were more pertinent to Kalamazoo as opposed to the search firm. And perhaps we should allow those questions to be asked of each of those firms, recognizing we're going to get into quite a few questions here, up to 14. So,
Yeah.
and whatever we can do to move the process along, we want complete answers as well, too, though, so. I'm wondering about the question, is your budget sufficient? Would they have put their dollars out there if they didn't think it was sufficient in the first place? Is that right?
Oh, that sounds fine. Okay.
Could we see, maybe I could ask them during their presentation if they'll talk about what separates them from others to, because they're going to get 10 minutes, maybe they can include that in their presentation. I think we could
Yeah.
build some of them.
Some of these questions may be included
Yeah.
in their presentation anyway.
But if, again, we're trying to handle time, it's probably easy for them to throw in if they didn't. And it gets at, making sure it gets asked.
I wanted
Mhm.
to add something maybe to question 7.
Okay.
And to question 7, I've been thinking a little bit about carrots and sticks. And if we really want this fifth thing and strategic recruiting, we have to be talking about compensation packages. They help us determine what kind of compensation package would make it more likely. It seems like it goes in
You
question
said that
7.
in your things, but some of them said that in their
Yeah.
things, that they would always figure out the concept.
So
But it might be-
it's kind of a win, I guess. I mean, because the way that these things typically are written is that once we've got them the final candidate, they'll help us do
Right.
the contract. And
Yeah.
I think if we're going to get a good candidate, we need to know ahead of time sort of what we're willing,
Okay.
at least in generalities.
Commissioner Anderson.
It is the case when it's sort of saves time, it is the case that when I looked at that initial RFP, for the first time we included the job description with the range in it, we said 75 and 13, which was what was included in that. And I know some of that information did slip out there in circular to become fact for where it was. So that sort of ties back to what you were saying.
So is the question where, at what point would you help us develop the compensation package?
Or at what point do you think we should or something? Again, getting back to the strategic picture, what point would you help us do it? Yeah,
And do you want to slip that in as part 2 of number 7?
that's right.
Okay, we better talk fast.
Okay.
Director Moore, did you have something to share?
I didn't hear the answer to the budget question. Are we asking the budget question? I want to make sure that you're not giving them an opportunity to rebid without opening it up.
That was rejected.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I've had some feedback, but with people saying, if you put $75,000 in there as salary,
Yeah.
you were way under, and this is totally unacceptable.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
It was one of our grading scale that really didn't apply here, so let's not even have that conversation.
Right, we gotta change that.
We want to talk about that number because then it gets out there.
Yeah, right.
Other.
All right, ready to proceed? Our first candidate here.
We just gonna go around 1, 2, 3, and then just.
If that's what you'd like to do.
Okay, I'll ask them all. Wait.
We already went street this one. Is there a website address?
Yeah, I believe Ed sent it to you, no? You want the actual address?
It's on his Facebook, I can find it. Surprised Emily probably knows it right off the top of her head. I tweeted
It's the
it.
exact same one as last time, it'll always be the same for the live streams. So if you've got that in your history.
It might be kind of nice to have 4 of these, and I could sort of score these questions.
And I believe Mr. Nullenberger from Voorhees and Associates has a PowerPoint presentation, so we'd like to get ready. Mayor, we may need to
Yep.
part the seas here.
Your guys are gonna be fine, it won't be in the way of the projector, just it'll be line of sight.
Yeah, they don't want to
You just
look
won't be
at
able to
the
watch
screen
it,
and
that's
look at
all.
me.
We tested it beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, welcome. We're
Yeah.
glad to have you
Hi.
here. And hand you out copies of it too. And we appreciate your firm's interest in the work for the city of Kalamazoo.
take my jacket off.
Yeah.
No, free. We will ask one, if you can do one thing for us. Would you, in your presentation, if you haven't covered it, I want to tell us a little bit about why your firm, you separate your firm as being one of the better firms from the others that have applied. I know you know who applied, but
Sure.
why you guys are the ones, I guess, is what we're asking.
Happy to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me introduce you to all the commissioners. Commissioner Robert Sanabro here.
Good evening.
Commissioner Moore will be here momentarily. I know she's running late. Commissioner Miller,
Hi.
Commissioner Anderson in the green, Commissioner Cooney in the blue, the Vice Mayor Mahana McKinney, and then I'm Bobby Hopewell, the Mayor, and then we have our City Attorney, Clyde Robinson, Scott Borland, our City Clerk, and of course you know. And welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you and the opportunity to meet with you this evening. As I indicated there, I'm Carl Nullenberger with Voorhees Associates. I handed you out a copy of almost all the slides except for the first one and the last one. So with that, I'll just use the slides as an outline presentation for you. Obviously, our firm does executive recruitment, and we try to tailor our approach to meet your particular needs for the recruitment selection process. In my opinion, it's one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. It's very crucial for the overall. But our philosophy definitely relates around the service, the integrity, the trust, and the respect that I think is very crucial to be effective in the public service environment. In terms of service, we're here to meet your timelines as much as possible. In terms of integrity, we try to be completely open to you as well as to other individuals within the profession, so that everybody's can trust each other in regard to the overall efforts. In terms of the trust. It's sometimes we have information and we make sure that you get all information that we know about everybody, so that you're in the best position to make decisions. And we definitely have a respect. We're well regarded in the profession, and we have a high degree of respect for you as elected officials in this particular field. Our experience, we have consultants located in Illinois, Wisconsin, Delaware, and Arizona, and we've done lots of searches over the years. We have a Midwest concentration, but we're national in scope, so we really do zero in on the Midwest, but we have a national scope, and we do searches throughout the country, even though most of them are in the Midwest. The consultants assigned for this particular position, this search, I would be the one that would be the front person. In my case, I'm Vice President with Voorhees Associates, and I have 43 years worth of experience in public management consulting and in city and county management. I spent 30 years as a city manager, county manager around the country, from Iowa to Minnesota to Texas to Minnesota to Illinois. So 4 city manager positions and 2 county administrator positions before I retired from that and went into a combination of academia, went back to school. So now I'm Dr. Carl. So I went back to school, got my PhD, and now I'm an associate professor in addition to doing consulting. So I do the 2 combined, and I teach in the Masters of Public Administration programs. So that's the area that I'm in, teaching the next generation of city managers. But having worked in Beaumont, Texas, and in the Minnesota and Iowa environments, I definitely learned the difference and the significance of culture of the community and culture of an organization, and the differences that take place between those areas. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But in addition, I have lots of networks built up with the International City County Management Association. I was president of ICMA back in 1994 and 95, and obviously got to know a lot of people around the country. I've built up lots of networks with city managers and assistant city managers around this country. In addition, I'm a fellow in the National Academy of Public Administration, if you're familiar with that. It's the congressionally chartered academy. There's 800 of us fellows who provide free consulting work to Congress. I'm currently doing a study for Congress and will be presenting to them this fall. And we do that kind of work for them in an effort to enhance the public administration field. And also the UWO, there is University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, that I'm affiliated with, and with other academia. That way I'm able to access Masters of Public Administration programs in other states, and a lot of times they'll send out information for us to all of their alumni and so forth. So those networkings really help in terms of getting, knowing who to contact and how to go about doing that. I'll talk about it more in a minute. The backup would be Heidi Voorhees, who's the president of Voorhees Associates. It's always good to have a backup assigned that you keeps informed on what's happening in case you get run over one night by a Mack truck. There's somebody there and you're not put in a position of not having somebody right there to work with you. So just examples of some recent recruitments that I've been involved in. Actually, I'm actually doing one right now for Janesville, Wisconsin, which is a town of about 65,000 people. City manager position, but I recently did the Fond du Lac. Wisconsin one, Whitewater, Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Fond du Lac's about 70,000, Oshkosh about 70,000, and so forth. So yes, I've done a number of searches over the course of the last 9 years, even though I've been actively engaged in academia as a associate professor now during that period of time also. Our approach, I just have to really emphasize this very first one because that's why I talked about my experiences in Beaumont and in Minnesota. I really believe you have to gain, as the executive search consultant, a really good understanding of the community and the organization. And that really means understanding the needs and the desires and the issues and the challenges. It's the most important step, in my opinion, in an executive search process. And that means interviewing and talking with people here in this community, the council members individually, department heads, and anybody else that you think would be of value to us. Because you have to get somebody who is the right fit. It's fairly easy to get somebody who has the expertises, the experiences that you're looking for, but getting somebody whose management style and traits fit this community and fit this organization is crucial. You can be the absolute best manager in the world, and not be the right one for Kalamazoo in 2013. You have to be the right person at the right place at the right time. And I learned that lesson, having been a city manager in a variety of cultures and organizations, and how that it has to fit in order to really be able to. So you need to understand the culture in the organization. And then the next step we do is develop a recruitment brochure, and I'll pass you copies of it right now, of the one that, copies of the one I just did for Janesville. A lot of cities are not having them printed anymore. We had this printed because we used it last week at the Wisconsin City County Managers Association Conference, and the week before at the Illinois City County Managers Association Conference. Most cities, over half the cities, don't have them printed anymore. We send it electronically though, and in our using that brochure, which summarizes, very similar to what you put together in terms of experiences and management styles and traits. It also summarizes the community, and it's intended to capture people's attention and to say, hey, maybe this is something I'm interested in. So that's why the development of the recruitment brochure, in my mind, is a really important part, to have it available, to email it and to send it to people and the rest. The next step in our process is the candidate contact and open recruitment. Obviously, we make sure that it's placed, the advertisements are placed in professional journals, on websites. But in addition to that, we do a large degree of outreach to potential candidates. And we're using email, using snail mail, using telephone calls and personal contact. You know, for instance, on this Janesville search that I just talked to you about, I sent out 735 emails to city managers between 25,000 and 100,000 in the Midwestern states, and then also assistant city managers that we have a database on. So we hit all city managers in the Midwest and the assistant city managers that we have a database on, and then I started sending them to the board of directors of the state associations. You can get their emails off of their websites. And then tomorrow and Wednesday, I'm actually going to be doing telephone calls to a whole bunch of people. As a result of our conferences at Illinois and Wisconsin, with some people that expressed interest, plus people that I know in the Midwest here, calling them. So I'm doing an extensive telephone outreach effort to get additional candidates to apply for the particular position. So that's part of that networking with the state associations, and obviously I've attended Michigan associations in the past, as well as other Midwest states and so forth, in efforts to do that. Sometimes the association conferences don't match with the search, but sometimes they do. So we do the complete process coordination for you, where we acknowledge to every candidate that we've received your applications, and ultimately tell them what their status is. That's one of the things that candidates really like, is that we keep them informed. But all of our recruiters have been managers in the field, and as a result, they know how important it is to be informed as to what's happening, and keep people informed. So we take care of that effort. We do an initial screening. We put together a matrix of all the candidates. In the event that you want to see the matrix, it literally shows how many years of experience they have, what education they have, what our initial assessments of them are, and so forth, of all the candidates. And then what we do is rank those candidates, the ones that we think we should be following up with, because the written documents tell us about their experience and their particular skills. But in order to really get a feel for whether they fit this particular community, we need to interview them. I prefer to interview them by Skype, sitting there on the computer, seeing them, because I can get a much better feel for the individuals, talking to them over the Skype on the internet. Sometimes they don't have the Skype, which says something all by itself, but in today's world at least. But and so we interview them by telephone, or if they happen to be close by interviewing them in person. But usually I've interviewed 25 to 30 candidates that meet the minimum qualifications, and I get a feel. What I'm really asking them mainly is the kinds of things that fit the management style and traits, and whether they're going to fit the Kalamazoo organization, the Kalamazoo community. And then after those 25, we present or prepare, we do additional background inquiries, reference checks on them, at least 2 reference checks at that point, education verification. We also do Google checks for news stories on them at that time. I always ask the question, is there anything embarrassing that we should know, or that Kalamazoo officials should know, that might embarrass you if it became front page newspaper story in Kalamazoo? And most people are pretty honest, but I had one outstanding candidate, for instance, I'll give you an example, who seemed to forget, and I found a Google story that a month before, where he'd been walking through the park and at 10 o'clock at night, and a young African-American gentleman made a comment to him, and he beat the heck out of the African-American gentleman. And he forgot to tell me about that, you know, and
Really?
and obviously it's one of those things that you want to know about. You want to be able to say, hey, this is something that's you need to know about. So we do Google checks at that point. What we then do is prepare a report. Usually it's 10 to 12, what I call semifinalists. And that's when we present that to you in advance of a meeting with you, come and meet with you, tell you about our interviews with them, give you the responses on the reference checks, and so forth relating to that. And then you choose the ones that you would like to interview. Most cities interview 5, 6, or 7, somewhere in that range, in order to have a good situation. We take care of facilitating all the logistics of the finalist interviews. In addition, we meet with you to tell you about the various options that take place within an interview process. Usually it's a 2-day process. And what I do is lay out, 15 to 20 interview options. Sometimes you want department heads would meet with them. Sometimes you want citizen involvement in panels. Sometimes you want reception. Sometimes you want a social gathering with the candidates. So I lay out all those options, and you decide how it is that you'd like to handle those particular elements of the recruitment process. And then we put together the schedule and do all the logistics for you relating to that. But then in addition, we do additional background checks on the 5 to however many you choose for finalists. We do the criminal checks. Those cost some money, so we do it only on the final ones. The criminal checks, the credit checks, the motor vehicle checks, and then we do the LexisNexis media checks, which is more extensive than the Google checks, in order to try to find any additional items and make you aware of all of that type of information. So with that, then we provide to you the potential interview questions and let you decide which interview questions you would like to put together. We help facilitate, the final interview process, and if you want us to, we're happy to be involved in the negotiation of the final agreement with those individuals. So all of those are elements going through the process. I'm trying to do it fairly quick to keep within my 10 minutes. In terms of a schedule, each process is unique and we're flexible. We're able to adapt to your schedule as needed. If you want to get this moving right away, I can be back here Thursday and Friday of this week and get things started. So depending upon how you want to get moving. What we would do is, once you approve a contract, we'd provide you a detailed recruitment schedule that would show you exactly what would happen and when it would happen over the next 90 days, so that you'd know now when we'd be meeting with you next and when the schedule for interviews would take place, to make sure that it accommodates all of your schedules and that it works out in that particular regard. Throughout the process, we try to make sure we keep good communications and coordination. We are accessible throughout the process. We maintain regular contact with whoever your liaison is here within the city, and we provide regular status reports by email. So I just sent an email yesterday to Janesville City Council telling them what the status is of their search, how many candidates have applied so far, and what's going on, and when the deadline, reminding them when the deadlines are, and that I'll be meeting with them on July 8th to talk about the interview process and so forth. So we try to keep everybody well informed of what's happening with at least bi-weekly newsletters. So with all that, the path to success really is a partnership between everybody that's involved in this. And it's really important to present the position and the community as a great opportunity in a professional setting. That's one of the reasons I like having a brochure that looks like that can really reach out to people and say, hey, this is really important. We think it's important for you to know about this. So we're known in the profession for our process and our approach and our network, obviously, of knowing all these people. My colleagues also have lots of networks in the city management field. We deal with each other and say, okay, here's this position, do you know of some good candidates? So it's not just my network, it's also my colleagues' network that go forth on this type of a situation. So all of those are elements that I think are important to the overall process, and we hope we have the opportunity to work with you on this one.
Could you comment on
what
separates your company? That question we wanted you to answer.
What separates us from the other firms, I'm not gonna speak negatively of the other firms because I've actually been a candidate with some of those other firms that applied for you here in the past, and I have some high regard for some of those other firms. One of the things, an area that I think is probably the most dominant is our network and our knowledge base of city management. I've been a city manager, as I said. I spent 30 years in the city management and county management profession. Heidi spent whatever it was, 25 years in the city management profession. Heidi Voorhees. My other colleagues, Mark Moran, also spent like 30 years in the profession. Mr. Luft out in Delaware has also spent about 30 years, as well as Steve Beach down in Arizona. So we have a wide network of people that we know within the profession that we reach out to, and a high regard from people within the profession for our firm as well as our predecessor firm that had financial difficulties. But it was PAR Associates, if you're familiar with it. That it's one of the highest regarded firms in the business. And Paul Rayum, who is a mentor to me, is one of those people that everybody knew within the profession. So we're kind of the successor to PAR Group, and we do that. But I think that really distinguishes us, the fact that we have that level of network and that level of respect from people in the profession.
Well, again, welcome. I don't know if you know much about our format, but what we're going to do is have every commissioner have opportunities to ask questions of you, and we're going to start with Commissioner Anderson, but I'm going to go with quick first question, and then we'll go from there. First question, and you may have answered some of these, so if you can be succinct, or if the commissioner feels that it's been asked, you can ask the commissioners, are you okay with that, not asking it or whatever. The first question, as you know, we're going through a process of rebooting our search. So how would you go about revitalizing this search, and how will that differ from generating an initial search?
But to me, I would use the same process as that initial search does, because while the profile that you put together reads very well, I need to have a feel for the community and a feel for the organization and a feel from you as well as others within the organization for what you're looking for. I don't know if you've ever seen a study on how we communicate with each other, but they broke it down into 3 elements: words, intonation of the voice, and the nonverbals. And they indicated, they found that when we got communicating our message, that the words were 6% of getting the message across. The intonation of the voice was 46% of getting the message across, and the nonverbals were 47% of getting the message across. The profile that you've written so far is words. I need to assess, from talking with all of you individually as well as others in the organization, what it is for sure you're looking for. And I think that's an important element to move forward from. So I think we have to keep the same time schedule. Yes, there's a challenge with a search that has been rebooted in this particular manner, because there's questions that come up. Okay, why did this happen? And we'd have to be in a position, we'd obviously need to ask you all those questions so that we're in a position to respond to candidates that that are applying, or that we're trying to convince to apply, as to the direction this is going and why. And I'd mention one other challenge that's in there is your election is coming up in November, as I understand it, and everybody's up at the same time. So that offers that provides oh my goodness, what happens if all the council turns over? And at least in what I saw on the website, only two have applied or registered to run again so far, 2 of the incumbents. So I don't know what the rest of the plans are, but that's one of the questions I'd be asking you individually.
Commissioner Anderson?
Well, let me see, you might have actually answered a portion of this, but how would, and you've already expressed what concerns candidates might have, but how would you address the concerns potential candidates may have in light of the restart search?
Well, see, that's why I'd have to have that individual discussion with each one of you so that I could address that. Because I'd want to know exactly why the reboot happened. I mean, all I know about it at this point is what I've read about in the newspaper, all the newspaper stories. I read all the newspaper stories before I came here. But I would need to know confidentially and candidly from each one of you individually exactly what happened. And I need to make sure that we structure a message that's honest and candid with the candidates, but not negative.
Commissioner Kuhn?
Okay, this has got three parts to it, Mr. Mueller. You were asked to review the profile for the city manager position that was drafted last fall. And did you review the profile?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Would you revise the profile, and if so, how? I think I'm getting the feeling that you've already addressed that.
Well, I would definitely expand the profile to the type that I showed you. So, because I would like to make sure that the profile talks about the community and gives information about the organization and how it's organized and the rest. So it's an informational approach. The other piece I would add to it is what are the challenges and opportunities that are here within the organization, and I didn't see that in this particular profile yet. What is the rest of this? It may be, by the time I'm finished with the interviews and talking to all of you, it may be the same, or it may be that I feel something different, that the fit that I understand you're looking for may not be the fit that is in this particular document, but I don't know that for a fact. So, but what I want to do is assess that in a couple days worth of interviews as to exactly what it is that management style and management traits you're looking for in the next city manager here. Because as I said once before, it's got to be the right person in Kalamazoo in 2013.
I think you just answered my third part. How would you use the profile in the course of the search? I think you just said that. How you would do that. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. What unique attributes of Kalamazoo would you use to promote the city as a city of opportunity?
But see, that's where I'd have to do that on-site search. Got here an hour and a half earlier than my time to be here. I got here in the building at 5. So I wandered around the city, and you've got lots to promote. I mean, it's a beautiful city to drive around. It's got some neat stuff in it. That park across the street is fantastic. I could sit there every lunch hour, frankly. But yes, you can drive out and about. You've got a nice university setting there. You've got lots of what looks to be lots of stadiums, athletics, environment, the rest. But I would have to assess that in much more detail, because that's one of the things I would want to do, and that's why in the brochures, such as the Janesville one, I tried to make sure I knew everything there was about the city. I would want to have somebody who's really knowledgeable on Kalamazoo giving me a short tour also, so that I make sure that I have seen the right things, not just my self-guided tour I did this afternoon, but something that's more, okay, here's what's really great about this community and whatever it is I missed. But what I do is I end up reading all of the Chamber of Commerce brochures, I end up reading all the materials, the online, I did the wiki reading already about Kalamazoo, but I want to make sure that I've done an in-depth analysis and study of the city so that I know what to promote. The things that candidates want to know about are the education systems, they want to know about the healthcare systems, they want to know about the parks and recreation activities, they want to know all those areas. And that's what I try to promote as I write that brochure, so that they can get a summary without having to spend 8 hours reading material like I did. They can have a summary and say, here it is, and I can read this in 30 minutes and know what's really great about this particular community.
Diversity, is that the right one? Certainly includes race and gender, but also personality, life experiences, and backgrounds, among other things. What methods would you use in previous searches to actively recruit a diverse pool of candidates, especially those who possibly would not otherwise apply?
Okay. Well, one of the things we do is make sure that we advertise in settings that do that. I didn't bring lots of copies, but for instance, here's the advertisement settings I just did for Janesville, which includes the International Hispanic Network, it includes the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, as well as all the states and so forth. And yes, it costs about $1,500 by the time you're finished posting in all these different networks, as well as the ICMA area. But in addition, we reach out if we try to make sure that we're bringing to you a base of candidates that has the diversity that you're looking for. I noticed that this is a fairly diverse community. 28% African American, I think it was 8% Hispanic, and some, a small number of Asian Americans and so forth. But yes, there's diversity in the community, so I'm sure you'd want to have a diverse base, and we would make sure that we reach out to those areas.
Thank you.
I'm going to dive in with a follow-up to that question. I heard you say International Association of Hispanic, or International Association of the Black Administrative Association.
National Forum for Black Public Administrators, NFBPA.
Then I thought I heard you say in states. What do you mean by that?
With the state associations, each state has a website for position openings. And, you know, for instance, when we did the Janesville one, is we put it on the Illinois, the Iowa, the Wisconsin, the League of Wisconsin, the Missouri Municipal League, the Iowa League, the Michigan Municipal League. If you go on their website, that's where most managers are looking at these days for positions if they're interested in the position. If they're interested in looking for positions, they're looking on those websites in today's world, as well as the ICMA newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. But even that's an electronic version these days, as well as having a website that has it all listed. So those are the areas that you have to post on to make sure that you're covering. I don't do all 50 states. I do the Midwest states for a Midwest position, or Southwest states for a Southwest position. But then we do the international newsletter, which hits everybody within the 10,000 people who are members of the International City County Management Association. Yes, that one's a little more expensive. It's $445, but it's the one that catches all 10,000 people that are out there. So, but we try to make sure that we're reaching out. But once again, that's just the posting. It's the individual emails, it's the telephone calls, it's the other issues that I have found to be more important than just the advertisement.
Commissioner Sinaber?
Dr. Nellenberger, how do you identify the potential in people who have not held the top position before, such as department directors and others?
One of the questions I always ask you individually and then put together as a group, whether you're open to having somebody who's been a professional in municipal government but not in a city manager position. There are some cities that say, no, we have to have somebody who's been in the city manager position, and other cities that say, no, we're open to somebody who's been in a executive level position in city government, and other cities that say we're open to somebody who's been in a management position in the private sector only. You know, for instance, I did the Fond du Lac search, and they were open to the broader picture. And, you know, the person they hired was an individual who'd never been a city manager, but he'd been in the military for 25 years, and he was a community manager within the military. And they were totally open to that and hired him. That was the one they wanted, for sure. So it's a matter of reaching out based upon what the initial profile interview says you're open to. So if it is people who are department heads and want to move up into a city management position, absolutely. And if that's the case, what I then do, if you're open to that, is I would look at what skills you're looking for specifically. If you're looking for economic development skills, as mentioned in your profile as being one of them, I would then be advertising it on the NARO site, the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials site. So I'd be reaching out to those areas that you're saying, okay, it would be good to have an economic development person moving up to be the city manager or something of that sort. So we target those areas based upon what you're telling me during that 2-day profile interview process.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moore, number 7.
We are as interested in selecting a new city manager who is a great quote-unquote fit for the organization and the community as we are in technical and professional abilities. How would you ensure that your list of finalists have the potential to be an overall great fit for the city of Kalamazoo?
And that's why I mentioned that during the profile process. That's why I need to meet with each of you individually to get a feel for what you think the fit is. What are the management styles? What are the management traits that you think fit in this community? That's why I really feel it's important to meet with the department heads, because I need to get a feel from them what it is management styles and traits fit in the organization. And then that's why I do interview by Skype, hopefully, as many of them as possible, 25 to 30. That's what I'm looking for. candidates, I'm assessing what their management style and traits are and how that fits based upon what you told me. And that's why I really feel it's important for me to talk to you, because yes, you're talking about management style and traits in this profile, but I have to get a feel for that. I have to assess it based upon what I'm hearing from you, not just what I'm reading right here. So that's what I assess those candidates on, and the final 10 to 12 that I present to you, I try to make sure fit your assessment of what it is you feel is needed in this organization and in this community.
I think you just answered that.
Yeah, there's a question related to compensation package that we wanted to also add into that. And I think you said it in your presentation. Am I one ahead? I'm one ahead.
No, it was actually, it was here, but in the presentation, you said you'd help us write if we needed to write a contract. But, for example, in the Janesville thing, you've got, the starting salary, $140,000, plus X in the benefit package. Is that something that you would talk with us about, as to what kind of compensation package we should be thinking about, and if so, when?
Absolutely, and because I really strongly believe that when you advertise a position, you should put a number in there. And what I do is I do a quick salary survey. Usually most state associations like Illinois and Wisconsin, it's posted right on their website what their salary, they do a salary survey and it's located on the website. So what I did is go into that, get the information, and provide you that information for comparable communities here in Michigan, maybe Ohio, Illinois, that you're competing with, of cities of 70,000 type of size. So I would provide you that information and suggest to you that it ought to be advertised at whatever the average wage is within those areas. In terms of the final agreement, I don't call it a contract because in city management you can't really have a contract like a football coach does. You work from one council meeting to the next. You're subject to being terminated at any time, although you can have a severance package, but you can't have a fixed contract under the Code of Ethics. But I do suggest to you, if you want it, I can provide you the agreement. The International City County Management Association has a employment agreement suggested. I was actually on the committee that just updated it last year, so I'm very, very familiar with it. And I provide you with that, and you can decide what you want to use in there or not use in there. You may have one in place already with the existing city manager, or not, I don't know, that we would just modify. But I'm more than happy to help you out in that regard, or once again, if you prefer to do those negotiations totally on your own, then I defer and step back out of the way. But I'm more than happy to do it also. There's no additional charge, it's just an optional item.
Commissioner Anderson, agree?
Okay, so we'll see as we're working our way through here whether there's anything unique to add. The question is, describe for us the process you use to vet the candidates you present to us. I don't know if there's anything you can add to really a variety of ways you might take the question, but.
I don't know anything I can add to it, but I'll reemphasize that we really do make sure that we know everything we possibly can know. That's the Google check I told you about, what I found on that one again. It's not that, it's not that disqualified him, but you needed to know about those kind of things. So that's why we do at least, on the first list of 10 to 12, we do at least 2 reference checks. We do the Google checks, we do the preliminary background checks, and so forth. And the final 5, that's when we pay for and pay the Oracle reports and do the in-depth criminal checks and motor vehicle checks and credit checks, as well as additional reference checks at that time. So you have at least 4 to 5 reference checks of each one, as well as the LexisNexis checks. Because at the time you interview, you need to know have all that information in hand so that you don't have to sit there and worry about whether it's the right candidate or not. And indeed, at the end of the day, on that day, 50% of the time I have the city councils deciding who they want to hire and not feeling the need to go through additional vetting because we've already done that for them so that they don't have to worry about that after the fact.
Okay, I think that this is one we haven't talked about yet. What have you found works best to get community involvement in the search process?
Well, in the initial profile setup, frequently the council wants me to meet with leaders within the community. For instance, in the Oshkosh search, I met with the Chamber of Commerce executive, I met with the head of the League of Women Voters, I met with the Community Foundation director. I interviewed probably 6 or 7 community leaders as being part of the profile so that I would better understand the community part of the profile. Sometimes cities don't want me to do that, that's up to you. In the actual interview process, when I talked about providing you options, that's where my option sheet includes those kinds of options. Sometimes councils want to have an advisory committee that they appoint interviewing the candidates in addition to the council interviewing. Sometimes they want to have a meet and greet with everybody in the community, or just invited people within the community coming to a meet and greet. Sometimes they want to have a reception. Sometimes, and when I did Columbia, Missouri, they had a press conference for each of the candidates prior to the interviews. So it's a wide variety of options. What I do on my interview options sheet is I provide you all those options, but you get to decide which of those elements you want to have included in that final 2-day interview process. But I try to provide you everything I've seen done in the past, that you can make that decision.
Good, thank you.
And I'm assuming, of course, we could add options that may not be on your list. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
We could add options that might not be on your
Absolutely.
list.
I would hope you come up with some that I hadn't thought of before. It'd be great.
Please.
Yes, well, I think, Ken, you would be the primary, and the question is, how would you communicate with us, and how accessible would you be throughout the search process?
I try to do emails at least bi-weekly, telling you exactly what's going on and what's happening in the process. If you want to have telephone calls, I'm happy to do that. With Janesville, I'm talking with the mayor by telephone every 2 weeks. But in addition, I'm sending emails to the entire city council every 2 weeks. So I try to keep everybody totally informed as to what's happening and when it's happening. And what I do at the very beginning, as I mentioned, is I put together the 90-day schedule, and I give that to you so that you know what the time schedules are, when things are happening, when ads are going to take place, when profiles are going to be, when we're going to do emails, when the deadline for applications is, when I'm going to be communicating with potential candidates and so forth. But I do that at least every 2 weeks, and if you like, every week basis, telling you exactly what the status is as of that time.
Suppose I all woke up in the middle of the night and started worrying, could I get hold of you the next day and ask my question?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm accessible, available anytime. And I have my cell phone with me. I turned it off right now, but I have my cell phone with me all the time. You can't be without a cell phone these days.
Thank you.
Number 11, Commissioner Miller.
If you were selected to conduct this search, how soon would you be able to start? I think he already answered that. What would be your first steps? I think he
Yeah,
answered
that's it.
Yeah, you're right.
You said this Thursday, Friday.
I could do it this
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday if you wanted me to, and it would
Maybe
definitely be, it would just be you getting somebody here, whoever the person is on site, that is going to be your liaison, would need to get all these things scheduled for me.
Yep.
But I could be over here by Wednesday night and start Thursday morning at 10.
You have a follow-up on this question?
I thought it was sort of a follow-up, and I just wanted to reference, because you'd mentioned 90 days several times, which obviously you're indicating that is, in your mind, the appropriate length of time this is going to take, is that 90-day period.
Correct. The 90 days is until you from the start to you choosing somebody after those interviews. Now it will take another, if it's somebody that's currently not employed, they may be able to start right away. But if it's somebody who's currently employed, they usually have a 45 to 60-day notification process to their employer. So you're dealing with, 90 days from now would be what? July, August, September, end of September, and end of October into November before somebody would be starting.
I'm just going to follow up on that. Though 90 days is what is your ultimate have you done searches that were less than 90 days that were successful?
We've done them in less than 90 days. It does take, it narrows the amount of time down that people have to choose to whether they want to apply or not.
So there are processes within your process that you could
We could
shorten.
narrow down, yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
I was just going to follow up on a comment that you made about that maybe this is a somewhat awkward time because we're getting up to our November elections relative to candidate concerns. So I guess that said, that it might be better for candidates to know, for current commissioners to announce whether they're going to run or not. Would that be a helpful component of this process to know that as you head into this search here?
It certainly would, and it'd be even more helpful if we did the interviews the Saturday after the election, so that they know who's going to be on the council. I realize that timing may not be what you want, but I'm telling you that there's concern with anybody taking a new job as to whether a total changeover in a council. They may say, no, we want somebody we chose, not somebody the previous council chose.
Right.
Now, it's not always the case, don't get me wrong. There's been, I didn't research the history here in Kalamazoo, but if there's been some stability, then may not be a major issue. But if there's been lack of stability, then that can be a major issue. And you can understand why. You're moving yourself and your spouse and your children and to a new position, that can be a little squeamish.
Commissioner Sanabo, you had your...
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. Yes, thank you. Dr. Nallenberg, I've asked the mayor permission to ask all 4 firms this question, and I know you've covered it, but I'm frankly going to pin each firm down. One of the things I found bothersome in the last go-around was we were actually interviewing finalists for the city manager position. The background checks, such as criminal background checks, had not even been completed the day we were interviewing.
They were what, time?
They were not completed on the day we were interviewing the 5 finalists that we were interviewing for city manager. They had not been completed yet. I think you've addressed it, but I want to ask you, for the record, how do you plan on addressing that concern?
As soon as you check, well, first off, we do those preliminary checks on the 10 to 12, but as soon as you choose your 5 to 6, we immediately get the Oracle reports done on the criminal background checks and the motor vehicle checks, on the credit checks, and so forth. And then we immediately do the extra 2 or 3 reference checks, as well as the LexisNexis checks. So those are always done a week before the interviews. I've never experienced it not being done on a timely basis.
Thank you.
And I can't imagine you doing the interviews without having that information.
Thank you.
That would be very, very frustrating.
Vice Mayor, is this a follow-up here, or is this a
No,
new
this is
question?
a new question.
Because I think Commissioner Anderson had added, did we hit all your new questions? We did what separates you, and what is your opinion?
I didn't ask that.
Okay, you want to ask that one?
Okay. And maybe you've addressed this in some ways, but from you being outside of Michigan, my question was, what, in your opinion, might be the view that candidates outside of Michigan might have about Michigan's current state, status as it relates to economics, political landscape, that sort of thing?
See, that's happening in so many states right now that I would not call Michigan's as being overly negative from a national perspective. I'd suggest Wisconsin's is probably more overly negative from a national perspective than Michigan's is. So it's a matter of informing them about what the situation is and what the status is, what the politics are, but I don't view it as being overly negative.
I know Detroit's been in the news, a lot national news a lot lately.
Right, but most people consider Detroit, Michigan is separate from Detroit in their mindset. And I don't mean that negatively. I'm actually a native Michigander, believe it or not. I was born at Pontiac General Hospital way back when, so I follow a bit. But I'm not an expert on Michigan politics at this point. I have to get up to date.
Vice Mayor McKee?
Yes, thank you. Have you ever had a search go badly? And if so, what happened? And how did you fix it or not?
In my personal situation or in our firm's situation?
Since you're going to be, you'd be our person, I guess you, or...
In my personal situation, no, I've never had one that didn't get hired. A person didn't get hired at the 90-day process. In our case of our firm, yes, there have been, Janesville is an example 5 years ago. They didn't hire any one of those people in the first round. And Heidi Voorhees was the consultant to it, and she had to bring in a second set of 5. They asked her to do the second set of 5 because they didn't feel like they had the right candidate the first time. But obviously they were happy with us because they hired us back again now to do the search without even interviewing any other firms. So they obviously weren't mad at us individually or felt otherwise.
That's the last question I believe.
Thank you.
Did I miss one? Do you have any other questions you thought of?
We're gonna keep on time.
I got one.
Commissioner Cook?
Have you done any searches for city managers in Michigan?
No, I have not.
But do you feel like you have strong enough connections here?
Oh, yes. Yes, I know a number of managers here within the state. A couple of them were your candidates last time. I mean, I've attended a couple of Michigan City Management Association meetings and so forth. Spoke at a couple of them. One of the previous presidents of ICMA is in Hawaii here and so forth.
Any other questions? Doctor, we thank you for coming in, and we certainly appreciate your interest in doing this work for the best city in the whole United States.
Thank you very much.
Stay in touch.
I would enjoy doing that.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll see you Thursday or Friday.
Thank you.
Who's next?
I'll go check in with Sherry Welch.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioners, again, if we think that, if we think they answer the questions,
Yeah.
even though we did very well at the time.
Thank you.
So I'll give you that. Certainly, if we think they've answered the question, ask us and we can just go on. We
Yeah.
could have a number that we heard.
No, I'm
You guys did.
Is that when we talk about the nexus and stuff like that, where they show everything?
Give me enough leeway how far that
Yes.
can go. I just killed this whole list.
It's gonna be after all the interviews are done.
Patsy, if you have a question.
Raise your hand.
Yeah. Okay.
Tom may whisper one to you. You don't even know it came from Tom.
Yeah.
You're certainly allowed.
Oh.
But he should
Yeah, I gotta
just ask
remember.
it, so.
Yeah, he can ask.
Yes.
What one was that?
Yeah, this one.
Oh, we also need you to speak up, if you would, a little bit for the volume for the web streaming.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you guys are talking, that'd be helpful.
Pay attention to what they're saying, because a lot of us stuff he answered. These
Yeah.
questions he'd already
Right.
answered.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
right.
even
A
in
lot
this
of time kind
presentation.
of recapping.
Right, exactly.
David looks like he's ready to go home on time.
That I am.
It's Monday night, WWE wrestling.
Never miss live. It's taken.
That was your mom.
Okay, commissioners, we have Sherry Welch.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
How are you?
Good to meet you.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Bob. Good to meet you.
Hello, Miss Sharon, how are you? Good.
How are you?
Welcome.
Oh, there's a place. How are you? We look a little bit different when we're not working out the light. Hi, David. How are you?
Swimming trunk?
Spinning shorts.
Spinning.
Yes. You want me?
Yes, Chris, fine. Would you like to
Alright, get it.
I'd love some, thank you.
Get started.
Well, Ms. Welsh, we are glad to have you here before us. We want to thank you for your interest in doing this work. We're going to just dive right in. You're going to have time for a presentation. I think you were informed of that. We do want you to add, if you would, one thing in there. We're inquiring about what separates your company over the others that have been on this board, if you have anything you want to say about that. If you
I think I
wanted
might
to-
address that.
I thought you might. And with that, the floor is yours.
All right, sure. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to come and talk with you tonight. But I have to tell you sincerely, we may not be the firm you're looking for. Because we're not a large national executive search firm that specializes in governmental search work. What we are is a very well-established regional firm with a client base represented by very successful companies throughout West Michigan who need top talent to stay on top. So if you're looking for a firm like that, well, then we might just be what you're looking for. Welsh & Associates doesn't market its services through company brochures or advertisements. In fact, most of the positions that we recruit for are never advertised. However, we do market our firm through green, innovative, cutting-edge messaging and marketing, branding on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, our company webpage, through published articles, speaking engagements, and we market our searches by picking up the phone and calling our candidates. If you're looking for a firm that approaches marketing a little bit differently, well, then we might just be what you're looking for. Welsh & Associates services are not the lowest bid you have under consideration. I hope you all know that. I hope it's not the driving factor in your decision tonight, and if it is, I'll apologize right now for wasting your time. We are not the lowest bidder, but here's what we are. We are specialists in executive search and professional placement. It's all we do. We have a laser-like focused business model, and our firm has developed exemplary search techniques and processes that we stand behind, providing great results. It's worth every penny. And here's how we do it. First of all, we're generalists. We don't just search for governmental executives all day. Our clients represent a broad cross-section of for-profit and not-for-profit organizations who all share two things in common. One, the clients reside in West Michigan, and two, they're organizations that have a need for very top talent. Our broad industry and discipline focus has required us to become very engaged learners, excellent listeners, and even better communicators on behalf of all the clients that we represent locally. We don't know it all, and we don't know your organization better than you do, but we do know how to recruit. We work well in partnership with our clients who help us to understand their needs so well that we can articulate that and recruit the very best talent that's available on the market today, not just the best that's looking for work. So we begin our searches by constructing a profile, okay? It's built with your help, it's guided by our expertise, and you know your needs much better than we do. However, we know the market better than you do. So together we're going to put together a strategy that's going to uncover the very top level talent. And we're going to seek that talent out from among the brightest and best in the country. Okay? Last year, 92% of our placements came as a result of our networking and referrals. That's not a preset list of names. It's not a database. It's not a list from an email serve. It's not a glossy brochure or mailing or a fancy PowerPoint presentation. We're not under contract with any governmental operations, so that means we have the ability to recruit openly from any governmental organization or body that you would want us to target. And so what we do is research, and we determine where the best talent lies, and then we go out and market this opportunity to that talent, telling them about an opportunity with one of the best cities, if not the best city in the Midwest. We use the phone. Okay? Our first contact with candidates is always by phone. And the foundation of our success is really the relationships that we develop with our candidates, and it begins on that very first phone call. We engage them. Okay? We listen to them, and then when it's appropriate, we begin to talk about an incredible opportunity we're representing for a city called Kalamazoo. And as we develop that relationship with potential candidates, we start to uncover more and more about them. We really get to know them well. Their likes, their dislikes, their personality style, their work habits, their leadership style, their integrity, and their passion. And if we like what we're hearing, then as the relationship develops, we begin to sell the Kalamazoo area. And no search firm knows Kalamazoo better than we do. Our ability to market the city as both a great career opportunity and as a great place to live is really quite unique. Candidates trust us, knowing that a search that we're undertaking is more than just a paycheck for us. We truly want to help build a great community. And we're local residents. We might just become their neighbors. Through multiple conversations and Skype interviews with a number of potentially qualified candidates, we're going to determine who makes that short list. And candidates selected for presentation will have been thoroughly pre-screened, not just for background and experience and local perceptions of who they are, but more importantly for alignment with the culture and the vision of the city, its employees, and its citizens, as you articulated so well in your profile. And our final presentation of candidates, quite honestly, will be a list that you'll find difficult to pare down for interviews. So if you're looking for a firm with an innovative, outside-of-the-box approach, a fresh look on the perspective of the business of government, well, then we might just be what you're looking for. And lastly, let me share with you a little bit about our passion. Okay? Our passion as an organization is helping good organizations find great talent. We love Kalamazoo. We love the fact that this community has a Phoenix-like mindset, that whether it's a tornado, the loss of paper mills and manufacturing jobs, or the Great Recession, this community comes back and rises like a phoenix from the ashes, better off for having gone through what it went through. And in a small way, we believe that the work that we do helps to make our community great by helping strong organizations build a stronger local economy with opportunity and jobs for all. So there's an old Japanese proverb that says, vision without action is a daydream, and action without vision is a nightmare. Well, right now, right here in Kalamazoo, we don't have time for daydreams, and we don't stand for nightmares. As a resident of the city of Kalamazoo and as a business owner in the city of Kalamazoo, I'm keenly aware of the pressure that rests on all of you to make a good decision for the right search firm tonight and ultimately to hire the right city manager. I put some of that pressure on you because I too care deeply about this process and the end result and getting it right, knowing full well that we would all have to live with the results of our actions, good or bad, right or wrong. We're here tonight because we believe Welsh & Associates is the right firm, the firm with the passion and the vision that'll help you get the innovative leader, fresh thinking talent that you've been looking for. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight. And as a 25-year resident of the city, I'll tell you it'd be both an honor and a privilege to serve the city in this capacity and to watch one of our candidates help make our city even stronger. So with that, I will stop and invite you to ask me some questions.
Well, thank you very much. What we're going to do, we're going to go back and forth between commissioners. Commissioner Morrow will have the second question. I'm going to ask the first one. How do you go about revitalizing this search, and how will that differ from generating an initial search?
That's a good question, and I've got some pretty recent experience with that, unfortunately. I just completed a VP of engineering search where my client made a hire, and within 30 days the candidate accepted a counteroffer and returned to their former employer. Ouch. So we were put on the search and did successfully complete the search. In fact, an offer went out today. We treated that search, to be perfectly honest with you, no different than any other search. When we approached candidates, because we directly recruit, many of the candidates we spoke with did not know of the previous issues, okay? We felt once we got a qualified candidate in conversation, it was our responsibility to disclose there had been a hiccup, here's what happened, and pause and wait for their response. And quite candidly, if that scared them, if they didn't trust us, if there was an issue with that, we would back off right away. We didn't try to sell or push the candidate any further. But I'll tell you honestly, when I have dealt with situations like I just dealt with, where there might be a hiccup or a problem with the search, I find that honesty and sincerity is best. I have rarely had a candidate turn and run from that, and quite frankly, if they do, it's good to know it right up front. They're maybe not the right person for the job after all. if those kind of things scare them off. But I've not found it, honestly, to be a problem in stepping into a search when there's been issues. Does that help?
Does, I'm going to follow up. I don't know who to do this, but you've been able to observe, you were able to observe the first search. What's your opinion about starting this search over in light of what you saw in the first?
I have to be honest, I don't know the other firm. I don't know the work that they conducted. I don't know the process that they used. If you're going to ask me to guess, from what I saw in terms of the candidates that were presented, my guess would be that they were probably pulled from a list of names, a database, a collection of folks, maybe emails sent out and said, hey, what about this position? I don't think that they were direct recruits. That would be my perception. And I say that simply because, again, I didn't go through the interview process, you did, but what was reported in the media was a disappointment in fit. And if you directly recruit the brightest and best, it's not easy. It doesn't happen quickly, but when you talk to enough folks and you get to know them well, you do find the very best talent that's out there, not just the best that's looking. My sense is your pool was made up of the best that were looking, not the best available. You see the difference? And I may be completely wrong, and I'll apologize right up front to the other firm, but that would be my perception from the outside looking.
Mr. Moore?
I'm just so excited. I'm sorry if I seem too excited, but I'm glad that you're here. So my question to you, Ms. Welsh, is how would you address the concerns potential candidates may have had in light of the restart of this search process?
Well, really, like I explained to Mayor Hopewell, I'd be honest and sincere with them about what went on. I think that it's really important to be very transparent. I have a saying when I talk to my clients, everything out, initially, everything out on the table, no skeletons in the closet. I do not want my candidates coming into a situation and finding out surprises. I wish you would have told me this. There's nothing that derails, a good hire and ultimately a good placement, long-term fit, than surprises. Jerome may be able to identify with that a little bit because it sounds like he just went through a similar situation. So some of those things I guard against up front, honestly, Stephanie, by just talking about that and letting them know what they need to be aware of. And, every position has its opportunities and challenges, okay? When organizations hire people, they hire problem solvers. That's the only reason people get jobs, is to solve problems. So if they're not comfortable with the challenges that face them, well, then it's good to know that up front. And let's move along, right? Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
Mr. Sanabro?
Ms. Welsh, this is a three-part question I'm going to ask you. You were asked to review the profile of the city manager position that was drafted last fall.
Mm-hmm.
Did you review the profile?
Yes.
The second question is, would you revise the profile, and if so, how, speaking as generally as you can?
Sure. I probably would do a little revision to the profile, and whether some of that was done more as an understanding internally or was done in terms of what we sent out externally could be a matter of discussion. I felt that there were some areas of vagueness in the profile that could be better defined. For example, one of the things was you mentioned a veteran leader. Well, my definition of veteran versus the world's definition versus the city commission's definition of veteran might be something different, and I would seek to define that a little more clearly. There are a lot of key traits and personality styles and essential skills that were listed there, which I think are great. I felt there might be a bit of redundancy, and I like to see a profile that's a little bit more concise. I think we can probably say more in fewer words and really target in on the kind of individual. You probably did this to be very sure and clear that your intent was understood. We would understand that from conversation in the meetings with you and wouldn't find the need to have that elaborately detailed in writing. Does that help?
Yes. The third part to the question, subpart, how would you use the profile in the course of the search?
Well, we would use it with our consultants in the office who would be working on the search and supporting the search, uncovering candidates essentially, to make sure that they had a thorough understanding. When and as appropriate, we would share that with prospective candidates to make sure that they knew the kind of individual that the organization is looking for, the city is looking for. When we have a profile that details out things like passionate, charismatic leader, which I think is great, I want to be a little bit careful about spoon-feeding the candidates the right answers to the questions, because presentation of something like this too early in the process can allow them to tailor all of their answers to exactly what you want to hear. And that's really not what we want. We want to get to know who they are first and what makes them tick, what they're passionate about, what their career interests are like, what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And as we listen to that, then we sort of marry that with what we know about the profile. And eventually when we start to say, click, we're hearing it, then we release to them what we're looking for. My experience in the past has been if you let that go too early, they'll tailor their answers to it.
Thank you.
Just to add in there, understand that profile was developed by us internally. It wasn't what was sent to candidates. Just sent to doctors.
Okay, good.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes. What unique attributes of Kalamazoo would you use to promote the city as a city of opportunity?
Oh my gosh, where would I start? We have so much to market in this region and so many good things going on, from what's happening with Western and the medical school to our revitalized downtown to our strong neighborhoods. And we have challenges too. I mean, certainly that $2.5 million looming budget shortfall is a scary thing. So while we would certainly talk about all the great things that Kalamazoo has to offer, how strong our economy has gotten coming out of the recession and how we've recovered from that, we're not going to hide from the things that challenge us. And again, we think that the benefits and the opportunities of leading the city far outweigh the challenges, but if a prospective candidate doesn't see it that way, we want to know right up front and right away, and we will walk away. They're clearly not the right person for the job. But honestly, we have so many opportunities. The best way, I think, to market Kalamazoo is to find out what the individual likes. Okay, that's one of the reasons why our first contact with candidates is always on the phone. We want to get to know them. We want to get to know, they'll tell us if they have kids, if they're involved in athletics, if they, what kind of church they like to, and we're listening the whole time. And once we have a sense of what they like to do and what's important to them, well, then we'll talk about it. I'm not going to spend much time talking about the great ASO program that we have here, or fill in the blank, if it doesn't matter to them, if they don't have kids, for example. The promise is a great, great opportunity that we can use to market Kalamazoo. But if the individuals don't have school-age children, it may not matter to them. So what's important when you're marketing an opportunity is to know what the candidate might be looking for, what is important to them. Not only in the community, but in the position from a career standpoint as well, because everyone wants to be fulfilled in that sense.
Yes.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes. Diversity certainly includes race and gender, but also personality, life experiences, and background. What methods have you used in previous searches to actively recruit a diverse group of candidates? And you probably addressed some of this, but especially those who possibly would not otherwise.
We really don't struggle with diversity in our search process. What we typically turn up is what is reflective of the types of candidates available in that type of work. So to use an example, I just did a VP of engineering search, okay? Nationally, you won't find a lot of women as VP of engineers. So my client would not have been surprised to find that the 5 candidates I presented to them were all male, okay? So we will reflect what is available out there, and it really doesn't matter to us about the diversity factor. We're just going after the brightest and the best, and along the way we will always turn up diverse candidates when we're going after the brightest and the best. I just don't find that to be a difficult situation. City managers generally, I think, tend to probably be a little bit heavier skewed toward male than female, but you know, we're gonna look for as diverse a slate as we can possibly identify. And if we're struggling with that along the way, we're gonna let you know.
How do you identify the potential in people who have not held the top position before, such as department directors and others?
We look for results and look for their accomplishments. Even if they're not the top individual in their organization, they need to have been charged with some level of responsibility. So we look for what they did with that responsibility. I don't want to see them send me a report of what they were charged with. I want to see what they did with it. I want to see the results they got and what they made of it. And that's how we look at if they're ready to go to the next level or if they could replicate those results. Because the idea is, if you did it here for this city, if you did it here for this organization, you can probably do it over here again with the same results because you're innovative, you're creative, you think differently, you work well with people, you build great teams, etc., etc. If it's been done once, you will probably see that it will be done again.
Mayor? You may have answered some of this, but I think one thing that certainly came out of our previous search is that it's very important that we find someone who's a great fit for the organization, for the city. And how do you ensure that your list of finalists have that potential to be a good fit?
Yeah, great question. Well, we start that whole finding the fit right at the beginning of our process, which I talked about a little bit, and that is in developing the relationship. We think that executive search is a completely relationship-driven process, okay? And that's why we use the phone. That's why we don't send out email blasts and try to recruit people that way or post ads and look to see who comes to us. We do the research, we find the organizations where the top talent is, and we go for it. And we pick up the phone and we call them. Our style and our approach on the phone is very easy, it's very non-threatening. We have a very, very high success rate of people returning our phone calls when we leave messages. And then we just engage them and talk about, you know, the reason for my call is I'm conducting a search for a city manager in the city, and I may say the city of Kalamazoo and a city of Michigan, I may say. Just wondering, might you ever be interested in looking at a new opportunity? And if the answer is, yeah, I might, then we start to talk. And you know what, from that point, we really don't talk about the search. We talk about them. Well, why would you be interested? Tell me what you do. How long have you been doing that? Where have you had success in that? Where have you had challenges? I just let them talk and talk and talk. And as they talk, I'm pulling threads and I'm finding out more and more and more about them. And then eventually, okay, I'm getting to know them well enough that I can start to ascertain they're going to fit well in the city, or wow, their goals and interests are really not aligned with this position at all. This is not going to be a good fit. I don't allow them to tell me that right off the get-go. I ask them questions in order to draw that out of them, and then I ascertain. And you know, how do I do that? I do that, honestly, David, by years of experience. You know, I've been in the search business since 1998. I'm an SPHR, Jerome knows what that is. He's SPHR as well, Certified Professional in Human Resources, as well as a Certified Personnel Consultant and Certified Employee Relations Consultant, Retention Consultant. So, have a few letters after my name, been doing this for a while. We know how to do it.
I'm going to try a follow-up, and I'm wanting to make sure. How will you find, you've never done a city manager search before, how will you enter this new realm? And I mean, to build relationships, you have to know whom to call, whom to talk to. How does that come about, having not been in, well, you haven't been in engineering either, I guess, if you're not in engineering. I'm trying to understand more about how you're going to do this.
Good question and fair question, and I'm going to give you the inside baseball, okay? So after this, some of you may want to go out and search firms because you're going to know exactly how to do it. Okay? So here you go. This business is not rocket science. Okay, it's been made a whole lot easier in the last 15 years by the advent of the internet. Is there anything you can't find on the internet? Not really. You can find out about everything, especially when it comes to finding out information about cities and who is a city manager form of government, and a little bit about their executive or their number 2 executive or their leader of their economic development group or fill in the blank, wherever you decide that you might want to target. Okay. It's also not difficult to go to the internet and run that person's name through and see what their police chief says about them, see what their citizens write about them in the editorials in the newspaper, hear what kind of things that they've done, what they've been applauded for, and what they've been, run out for. So really, a lot of the research that we do at the very beginning of a search starts there. And then once we say, okay, you know what, we think we've got some individuals here that would be good to call, then we pick up the phone and call. So a lot of the initial work is done going into cities and finding out who's doing what. It's research.
I just want to push that just a little bit. So, do you have relationships with other, like the city managers associations, or like national groups for Hispanics, Latinos, African Americans, women, or?
I do have some groups that I work with, some Hispanic groups that I work with, but not that would have his city manager candidates. No, but really that doesn't matter.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of those association lists and information is all available out on the internet. It's not, that's the interesting thing. I think people tend to think generally that in order to be good at doing a search in a given discipline, you have to have years of experience in it, you have to have access, you have to know, you have to have worked in it. Mayor Hopewell's right. I've never been an engineer, and I do engineering searches all day long. And the search that we just completed with 5 candidates who I'd never spoken to ever before in my life, we directly recruited every one of them. They all happen to be right in West Michigan. We don't have to be experts in that area. We just need to be educated by our client, and we need to understand what our client needs, and then we just need to go and match that. It's not, I hate to say that it's really not that difficult. It's not. What it is time consuming. I mean, what you pay for in a search is someone who knows how to do the research, and someone who knows how to develop relationships and hear what you're looking for and uncover what you're looking for in qualified candidates when they're directly recruited. Not just reading a resume, looks like you got the right stuff, kind of a nice person, put that one in the short list. Because that is the last thing that we do. We don't work that way at all.
Right here, you're going to follow?
Yes, I wanted to follow up with your question. Do you think there's a difference though in organizations? I know you've done nonprofit searches and you've done for-profit searches. Is there a difference in the institutions that matters in the searches? Is there a difference in a public institution and how a search would go, or the people who would work in it? I mean, do you really think the same process works for all types of organizations?
From strictly a search standpoint and a recruiting standpoint, absolutely. I found no difference at all. When I did the search a few years ago for, I think they're now known as the Resource Center, KGLRC, but they're now known as the Resource Center. And we brought David Garcia to Kalamazoo. You know what I did? I got in with agencies and associations that were, gay, lesbian oriented. Now, I am not. I don't have memberships in those. Didn't matter. I just got on the phone and I talked to folks and I networked with them and I told them what kind of search I was doing and who I was looking for, and I talked and we came up with a great list of candidates and ultimately presented one who did a very fine job while he was here in Kalamazoo. So, just from a search standpoint, there really isn't any difference in the way we go about it. From the way the search rolls out, there are a lot of differences, because typically in a for-profit situation, you might be dealing with a an HR person and a hiring manager. In a situation like this, we're dealing with the entire city commission, as well as our public and the media and everyone else who wants to get their hands into the process. And rightly so, they care about it deeply. So you serve a lot more masters, I guess, as you roll out a search process in a nonprofit or governmental body. In a nonprofit too, you have boards and agencies that you have to report to.
You know, I guess I'm struggling a little bit. Let me just ask a question. What does the city manager do?
What does the city manager do? Well, I hope that you'll tell me all of the fine nuances of what a city manager does, but he is the administrative manager, as I understand it, for all the operations of the city. So he's running the budgets, he's managing the personnel, he's organizing the departments, he's fiscally responsible for the operations of the city from an administrative standpoint. I mean, that's my understanding. And I know our city commission form of government and our mayor is an elected position, and it's different than some cities that elect a mayor who actually runs the city. Our city doesn't do that. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioners.
Go
ahead. We got to get to the other questions.
Yeah,
go ahead.
but
I'm sorry.
This is for me.
Go ahead. You're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
I mean, you love the city and you have great advocacy for the city. Why should I want to pick you over a firm that has already done put 100 city managers in place, have a website of 7,000, and no, I mean, I want to ask you that honestly. I don't want to ask that when you're outside the room. I want to ask that right now.
I'm glad you do. If you don't understand the executive search process and the way the search process really works at this level, that's a fair question. If you do thoroughly understand it, it's an easy answer. And that is, search process is a search process. If you're working with a firm that's all they've done and they have 7,000 names and they've done this for 20 years, you can better bet believe where their search efforts are going to go, right into that database of recycled, reused, retried candidates. And our search, we don't care who's in a database. We don't care who's looking and unhappy where they're at right now. We search out the very best people in their field and actively recruit them, whether they want a new job or not.
How do you search out the best people in that field? How do you know the best people in that field?
We go on the internet, we read about them, we look and see what the public is saying about them, we get them on the phone, we talk with them, we interview them, we get to know who they are, we interview them for their background, their skills, their experience, as well as are they going to fit with the culture and the needs of the city. I mean, I don't know how to help you understand. It seems like it's maybe a little bit more technical and specialized than what it is. I'm telling you, I've been a generalist in executive search for 15 years. The searches that I have done have run the gamut, from accounting and finance to HR to supply chain to engineering to executive directors to we've never had a specialty in any of those areas. And honestly, we've never taken on a search that we did not complete successfully, an executive search. We've also never been released from a search for non-performance. So, I don't know if that answers your question, Don, but
I hear your answer. The way I think about it.
Yeah. For people that don't understand the executive search business, and firms that specialize, definitely want you to think that that's the way to go. And I just have to say, that's not been the way we've done it. Our process has been different. It's been extremely successful. If you've tried one way that didn't work out for you, maybe it's time to try another.
Commissioner Schnabel, I think you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think, are we on question 8? I think we are, right? Okay, Ms. Welsh, describe for us the process you use to vet the candidates you present to us. Now, I think you've touched on that a little, but if you want to elaborate succinctly.
Sure, sure. Obviously, we'll do extensive interviewing with them. I really like to use the phone initially, obviously, but also I like to use Skype. In the old days, everyone would want to fly out or drive out to meet their candidate, and with the advent of Skype, it's just so much more expedient and cost efficient for everyone to use Skype. So we'll spend as much time as we think we need to on the phone with them, Skyping them to get a real good sense of who they are. What are the questions we're going to ask and how are we going to get at that? Actually is going to be built once we fully understand the profile and what it is you're looking for and what the key areas are that you're going to want to know more about. Okay, so we're going to drill down into those areas, and when we present the candidate, there's going to be a full report to you with key highlights of their background and experience and why they time in. More so than just a resume and their salary and blah, blah, blah. We're going to actually connect the dots for you in this report between what you read on the resume and why we know they might be a good fit. So to tell you exactly the questions we'd ask, I'm not sure right now, but we would develop that somewhat with your help as we develop that profile together.
Commissioner Mill?
What have you found works best to get community involvement in the search process?
Well, it really depends on the organization, but most times I think it's good to have some open forums. You did this early on, so to suggest that it would be the right thing to do right now might be completely wrong, because I know you did this early on. You held some groups, you taught, focus groups and things, you talked with folks, but you want to give your stakeholders and your citizens in the process an opportunity to talk about that. You want to talk with your key leadership within the management ranks here in the city. I'm sure you probably have done that already too. So stepping into it as a number two in a situation like this, we would just seek to understand that information. And if you felt for any reason that there had been a change in the scope of the search or what you had been looking for today versus last December, we would want to understand those nuances. So up front, Barb, I think it's really important to get buy-in and get the input from your stakeholders. But again, I'm not going to suggest that you need to do that because I believe you've already done it, and I think you all have a pretty good handle on what you really want.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. Who is the primary on the search, and how will that person communicate with us, and how accessible will you be?
Well, you get me. I would be the primary on the search for you. And actually, if you open that blind, you might be able to see my building from here. I don't know if that's close enough. 141 East Michigan. Maybe I'm too accessible. Y'all could pop into my office at any point in time and have a cup of coffee. So pretty darn accessible. The work would be supported by 2 search consultants in our office, and their role would be primarily to do the initial research and to turn up the candidates. Okay, so they're going to be making a lot of the initial calls, engaging the candidates, and when they get someone that they say, Sherry, I think we got someone here, we got a good one, then they're going to turn them over to me, and I'm going to do the final interviews and work through the process to really determine the correct fit. So as accessible as you need me to be right over here every day. Or catch me at the Y. Some people can catch me at the Y. Tuesday, Thursday on a bike.
Commissioner Cooley?
If you were selected to conduct the search, how soon would you be able to start, and what would be the first step?
We would be able to start immediately. Executive searches, obviously take the top priority in our office. We just wrapped up a search in the Detroit area last week, so we do not have an executive search that we're engaged in currently, so we do have room on our schedule to do, and the rest of the searches we're doing are just contingent engaged searches at this time. So we'd be able to get started right away. And the first step would be, I would have to take direction from you, from Mayor Hopewell, to see how you would like to proceed. I would like to get a real good handle on the profile and exactly what it is you're looking for in whatever form that needs to happen, whether it's just sitting down with the mayor and vice mayor or all of you. You can dictate how you'd like that to go. I know there's a whole lot of trust building that has to happen in the initial stages, so if you all are more comfortable meeting with me as a group together to get to that place where you feel confident that I understand what you need to have done, I'm perfectly fine with that. Those opening meetings and conversations are critically important for setting the stage for how the search will take off from there, okay? Because once you release me with marching orders, okay, then it's up to me to fulfill that. And you're not gonna hear back from me unless I have questions until that final slate is presented. And it better be right, because we don't have time.
I'm glad you ended with that last word, time. I know the director has a question, and I'm gonna sort of add on as he asks his.
Well, I was curious about what you were saying relative to the process of making all the contacts and actually contacting people, recruiting people, as opposed to waiting for others to call in or accessing a database of some kind or another. That sounds like it could be time sensitive or time consuming, if you will.
Yeah,
What does your timeline look like?
And let me dive in there with sort of an add-on. And here's one of the nuances that is a little bit different for a nonprofit, and well, not necessarily nonprofit, but for executive search, or a for-profit firm. We have a little thing in November, as you know, called an election. And so one of the things we'll ask, you may have been asked about comfort of candidates regarding restarting the search. That may be an issue for folks. So the timing of this work is a little challenging probably for us, a little different. So that's why I think he's asking the question. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
At the timeline.
And I think that's fair, and I don't mean to minimize or disregard that, but I also think that if we have a candidate that's overly concerned about that, they're maybe not the right candidate for us. We go through this every 2 years in the city of Kalamazoo. We could have a different mayor and a vice mayor every 2 years. And if we have a candidate who's got cold feet about that and is afraid of that, then they're maybe not the right candidates for us to be looking at, okay? We've had a lot of stability in the city commission over the years with all of you sitting around the table and at the leadership with mayor and vice mayor. I think we can speak to that. But again, I guess I would go to, if we've got a candidate that scares them, they're probably not the right one, because every 2 years we're going to go through this again. And the timetable, I laid out in my responses to your questions before, but you know, a lot of our research time should not really take that long. One of the questions we would have to answer is if you feel the need to advertise, and that's your call. I would be happy to tell you my opinion on that, but it's your call as to how you want to handle that. And then what we're looking at is between week 4 and week 13, essentially no more than a 9-week period of us directly recruiting candidates and presenting 10 for review. Okay. And how fast the process goes on from there has a lot to do with how quickly you can get through the interviews. People's time being scheduled and participating and all the rest of that. But my timetable shows that having someone in place by January 1 is possible if we stay on it. I do think it is.
Commissioner Sanabria.
I think we're done with a number of questions, Mayor. So I just have my question. Ms. Welsh, I'm asking all the firms this question. One of the things that was a concern to me during the last go-around, the search firm that we hired presented finalists to us for interview. And the same day we were interviewing them, the background checks, including criminal background checks, had not been completed while we were interviewing the finalists. I'd like you to address that.
So you asked them to do criminal background checks, and they had not been completed.
When we were interviewing the finalists,
So they
same day we were interviewing the finalists, those checks had not been completed.
So, in other words, they completely disregarded your request.
Well, I think that's kind of a
Is that-
strong statement. We're on the record here. I'm not going to say they disregarded it. I'm just stating a fact here that the checks had not been completed. They were in process, but the record, and I want to be very careful about my statement here, was being broadcast.
The
And that's
criminal
a pub-
record checks.
The criminal record checks and the background checks had not been completed on the same day that we were interviewing the finalists. I'd like you to address that.
I'm not sure why they weren't, and it sounds like maybe you weren't even notified of that before the interview started.
That's not accurate, but go ahead.
Criminal background checks are something that our firm would not personally conduct, but would use an outside organization to conduct, okay? So to some extent, when that gets done is a little bit outside of your control when you outsource that to a third party. However, if I had candidates that were entering into an interview process knowing that there were steps that were not completed or fulfilled, I certainly would have made the commission know, made them aware of that, and let them know, and then the decision could have been made at that point to either postpone the interviews or continue with the interviews contingent upon successful results of those checks.
I'm going to follow up with that. So I'm going to say maybe a different way. Is it normally your process to have those checks completed prior to bringing folks to interview before?
It depends on the need of my client. So my clients will dictate at what point those reference checks happen, and I'll abide by that, whatever their request is. We just need to know what the preference is. And honestly, we have some that prefer to do it all on their own at the very last stage just as well. So we just need to know what's needed.
That's fine. I was going to try to phrase it better and get a better job.
Trying to help you when I can. Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
You've been recruiting folks from outside of Michigan to come into Michigan, and if that's the case, have you run into any kind of a general perspectives out there in terms of what people outside of Michigan are thinking about Michigan right now in terms of the economic and political landscape?
Yes, we do recruit folks outside the state of Michigan, and it is a bugaboo for a lot of organizations. It is a struggle. There are some perception issues. There are also real estate issues. There are also trailing spouse issues. So it is problematic. But where we find we have the most success is in being realistic about the opportunity. If we, let me try to use an example. If we have someone who we're recruiting and their spouse is a paleontologist, and they are the primary breadwinner, we might not be very successful getting them to come to Kalamazoo and stay for very long, because probably that primary spouse breadwinner paleontologist isn't going to find work in Kalamazoo. You with me? So some of it is understanding what the limitations are and knowing when you can go after a candidate and when you can't. We find the best candidates are those where, bringing the spouse along is not, for reemployment, is not going to be an issue. Where they have lived in the state of Michigan, or even better, West Michigan, they know the state, they love the state, they know the region, they've heard the reputation, and they're excited about it. If they have friends, family, grandma, grandpa, sister, brother, somebody that lives in Michigan, and they want to come back, that's a gold mine. Okay, those folks are very easy to recruit. But to think that you can successfully get someone out of Iowa who's never been to Michigan, has lived their whole life in Iowa, worked their whole life in Iowa, I gotta be honest with you, that's a long shot most times. That's a real long shot. Okay? So we try to talk to candidates and find if there would be a reason why they would want to come to Michigan, and that's how we start to determine that fit.
Vice Member Kinney?
Yes. Yes. Have you ever had a search go badly? And if so, what happened and how did you fix it or not?
Oh, I'm sure I have. I'm sure I have. Wow, that is a great question, and you stumped me with that.
Must not have been too recent.
I'm just trying to think. You put me on the spot. Can I come back to that? I would love to give you an example. I'm sure I have one. I'm not perfect. Certainly not perfect.
It is the last question.
And it's mine.
Okay. Well, I'll send you an email.
Well, she did say she was never released.
No, I have never accepted an executive search assignment to answer that I did not complete successfully, and I've never been engaged in any search where we were released for performance issues.
I think that's a good answer to it.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions? Ms. Welch, thank you very
Yeah,
much for
thank you.
coming
Thank
in
you. Nice
and
to see you.
your interest in this work.
You bet. Best of luck.
Yep.
Everyone go at once.
Allow you to use facilities that you would like to.
Oh, thank you.
Go.
You don't stick one of my numbers and step in my own glasses.
Oh.
I've done that before.
Risk management right here. It's obstacle course, isn't it? Sorry.
It's all right, no problem.
Keeps you awake.
I didn't know what the order was. I was all prepared. My draft in alphabetical order.
Commissioners, I bring you Sean Benziger.
There you go. Hi, Sean.
How are you? I'm Tom Muhlenbeck.
City Code.
Good seeing you.
Oh.
Hi. David. Hey, nice to meet you.
Don.
Oh, okay. No,
I'm sorry.
it's Benziger.
I'm sorry, I was one firm ahead of myself on the introduction.
No, that's
Oh,
okay.
gee, I apologize for that.
Barb Miller, nice to meet you.
Tom Muhlenbeck.
Nice to meet
Hey, Paul. Nice to meet you.
you. Jumping ahead, so I think SGR.
Should be SGR, one back here. Is this SGR right here?
Yeah.
Good, fine, welcome.
Good job. Everyone back, welcome to Kalamazoo, and glad to have you here. And I think our Human Resource Director, Mr. Post, is enlightening a little bit on the process tonight. You'll have 2 minutes to enlighten us, dazzle us, or...
How about none of the above, sir? What I would like to say, this is a follow-up to the presentation that our CEO, Ron Holifield, made to the commissioners. And we thank you very much for the return engagement. I would just like to make a few points, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
And before you do that, there will be one thing we'd love you to cover, if you could, in your opening, and that is what differentiates your firm from other firms.
Oh, I'll be happy to point that out. And Mr. Mayor, I take that very seriously because I never want to talk negatively about the other people. I would like to talk about the positive things that we're doing and what separates us from my perspective. Pretty basically, my name is Tom Muhlenbeck. I'm a city manager with over 40 years of service. The last city I served in was Plano, Texas for 23 years as city manager. I worked for 7 mayors and 34 different council people during that 23-year period, and it really opened my eyes a lot as to how managers have to adjust to the chemistry of the council and to the community. First of all, we really appreciate the opportunity to again present the qualifications of our company to provide Kalamazoo a successful city manager search. I would like to provide some highlights of the SGR experience, as I call it, and spend the balance of my time on responses to your questions. We feel that the SGR network, and that stands for Strategic Government Resources, is a network of local government professionals is second to none. We have provided employment, recruitment, and development services to almost 200 cities, counties, and utility districts in just 4 states. I will manage this search if we're successful in securing your approval, with direct involvement from SGR CEO, Mr. Ron Holifield, along with an executive search staff that have previously served other cities and other counties. I will be accessible 24/7 throughout the search process and can be reached by candidates by either cell or email. And we take that very, very seriously, ladies and gentlemen. We want to be in a position where we can respond to any candidate, because we in fact would be representing the city of Kalamazoo, and we would take that very seriously. SGR has developed a track record of confidentiality and counsel to candidates and next generation leaders. We have earned their trust to communicate honestly and bluntly and to maintain their confidentiality. But we also listen to your unique needs. Every city is different and requires skills and attributes other cities may not require. We can assure you of no surprises through our extensive background checks, online interviews, and detailed investigation history. We have provided in your packet a listing of client contacts for you to follow up regarding some of our previous engagements, just to be sure that what I'm telling you is certainly true. We will first of all begin by visiting in detail with the mayor and city commissioners, key city staff, and community representatives, so we can fully understand what drove the decision to start over and what attributes would you want, what does the community want in this next manager. Our reputation among city managers is straightforward in our communications. Since we all are former city managers, we have unique insight, we feel, to the chemistry that commissions want in a managers want in a commission. We go so far as to provide news links to candidates on stories regarding Kalamazoo. We conduct the most comprehensive media searches in the business. On our staff, we have an SGR employee who has particular experience in conducting media searches online, including Facebook, MySpace, YouTube, and certainly local blogs. SGR utilizes a private investigation firm to conduct all background checks on finalists. Finalist applicants will be asked to provide us, we will provide to them, a predetermined list of references, rather than have them give us the references they want us to check. We will tell them who we want to follow up with. May I also say, ladies and gentlemen, that 99% of our viable candidates for city manager will come from 4 sources. And I'm using this information regarding some recent searches that we have done. 37% will come from www.sgrjobs.com. Sounds a little braggadocious, I apologize. 37% of it will come from that. Our job board, which is what this is the largest and most comprehensive local government job board in the nation, with over 23,000 local government executive visits just last month. That is so important, so important. Secondly, 30% will come from our email blast. We have developed lists over the years from a weekly publication that we put out called 10 in 10 Update on Leadership and Innovation. Secondly, city manager job openings on our website has over 7,000 city managers, assistant managers, and aspiring managers who subscribe to this. Thirdly, personal emails will go out to selected people by our CEO, Ron Hollifield. And fourthly, emails will go out directly from your project manager, which in this case will be myself. So we're almost to the end now. 17% come from national advertising, and that's the International City County Management Association. Every city manager reads every newsletter that comes out from ICMA. There's no question about it. And this last 16% in these particular cases came from advertising in 4 different state municipal league publications. In addition, SGR will begin the process by providing a listing of documents and resources we need to better learn the organization and the community. While the information will be used in developing the brochure, it will also help us do a better job of assessing potential candidates. We have the ability to move the process as fast as the commission desires. However, we do not recommend altering our previous time frame that we set out in our original suggestion. We need to get it right. SGR provides the strongest guarantee in the search industry. There I go, Mr. Mayor, trying to point out the differences now. We provide the strongest guarantee in the search industry. First, our price is our price. That's it. You will not be charged an additional professional fee if we need to come to another meeting or spend extra time. 2, you always have 24/7 cell phone and home contact with the SGR CEO and with the project manager. 3, if you do not find the right candidate, we start the process over at no cost. That has not happened. 4, if we place a candidate who stays less than 2 years, we will conduct the search again at no cost. And lastly, if we place a candidate with you, we will not solicit them for another job for a period of at least 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, our success has been derived from 2 factors. Really, one, exceeding the expectations of our clients. I know you've heard that over and over again, but we do. We strive to deliver candidates that matches the chemistry of the community and of the commission. Secondly, if I could just give you an example right there, we had never worked in the state of Washington previously. We went up to a community that was looking for a city manager. We were lucky enough to be awarded the position. We provided them with a city manager, the first professional manager they had had. They thought so much of the service that we had provided them. We're back and found them a chief of police. Should I point, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Pause for a second.
It's not that I'm not taking this lightly.
That's the media.
That's the meeting.
Oh, that's the meeting.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
The caption on that one.
Yeah, I've got to be careful. They called us back to find them a chief of police, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we're back finding them a director of public works. Simply because I think we deliver them a service that they just were not used to. And secondly, exceptional relationship with candidates. SGR's reputation for being truthful and straightforward is exceptional. Successful and unsuccessful candidates praise SGR's communication, information, and confidentiality. We practice, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but we practice the golden rule, treating the applicants as we would like to be treated. As being city managers, we've been through this process. We've done this more than one time. We know what it's like to be treated correctly or not correctly. I don't know if Mr. Hollifield told you this when he was here before, but he applied for a job in Florida about 18 years ago, and he still hasn't heard whether or not he got the job. You know, that's just ridiculous. That's not the communication that we need. This golden rule really does work. In closing, our exposure nationally to government managers and leaders is unique in the search business. Our CEO, Ron Hollifield, speaks in an average of 1 state or national conference per month, providing a high degree of visibility and a stronger network among leading financial and municipal administrators. Ron has spoken over the last 2 weeks at conferences in Tennessee, Nebraska, and Texas. SGR trains approximately 800 local government employees each month in live training classes. In addition, we have online training clients in 17 states, providing again national exposure. And lastly, SGR has been featured in Entrepreneurial Magazine, American Express Open Forum, Texas Events Planning. We feel that this work that is being done is really changing the way that recruiting is being done all across the country. We strongly believe that if all you are looking for is a stack of resumes from qualified candidates, you don't really need a search firm. While we will bring you a strong field of qualified candidates, our real value is in helping you find the right person who is a great match for the city of Kalamazoo. This is only possible if we heavily invest in understanding Kalamazoo and developing a strong partnership with the City Commission. I thank you very much, and I apologize for some of the lightheartedness. I'm afraid I can't go through it. I'm originally from Michigan, spent most of my life in Texas. So glad to get back to the state where I can see Brenner's ginger ale again. Really, I missed it.
Well, thank you for that opening statement. I have the first question, and I'll ask it, and then we're going to go to Commissioner Cooley for the
Yes,
for the next question. How will you go about revitalizing this search, and how will that differ from generating an initial search?
How will it differ from the initial search that you had? I reviewed, sir, the listing of attributes that was done. While I never cast a disparaging comment on that, it seems like an awful lot of time was spent in putting that together as opposed to maybe the amount of legwork that could and should have been done in finding candidates.
Let me just dive in there. That document you may be referring to, we did as a body. That's not the profile that was used by the previous firm. They used that to build the profile.
Yes, sir. And the profile itself should really not contain all of that. Most of these things, sir, are going to be, honestly, attributes of candidates that we will bring you in the first place. Where our understanding of what you want are such things as education, sensitivities to the community. I did not find that much in here about the university. I did not find that much in here about the university, which seems to me like is a tremendous economic engine for this community. Now, whether or not you would want a person who has had experience working in a university community previously or not, I filled a job with the city manager in a community that had a university. And the council wasn't that strong on finding someone that had worked previously in a community that had a university. But these are a number of things, Mr. Mayor, that we really want to hone in on so that we have a lot better understanding. We think the chemistry that you all have with this person coming in will determine the success or failure of that person and of this community.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooley?
How will you address the concerns potential candidates may have in light of the restart of the search?
That's an excellent point, and that's something, again, if we get to this discussion, that's what we really need to have. I really need to find out what were the driving factors behind it. I know some of the finalists that you had. I know them personally. You know, I really have got to find out what it was so that we do not go that same route. That's why this information is so important, sir, and I can't stress that enough. This face-to-face communication with the commission, with the community, with the department heads. All of these people have answers for us that will help us. And I think that will go a long way, but we will be truthful. We will be truthful with the candidates. We will not pull any punches. If we find there were some things there that shouldn't have been, we'll share that with the candidates, sir. We feel just as indebted to our clients as we do to the candidates.
Thank you. Vice Chairman McKinney?
Yes. Okay, this goes back to a question about the profile, and I think you pretty much answered this. The profile, the city commission drafted a profile for the city manager position. Did you look at the one that we drafted, and you've already mentioned how you would revise it, but how would you use that profile in the course of the search?
Is this the one we're talking about here,
Yes,
the
that's the one.
three-page one?
Yes.
I think there are similarities that run through this. It's awfully, with all due respect for the fine work that you've done, it's awfully busy. It's awfully busy.
Yeah.
And there's a number of things that we have quite a bit of repetition on. If we can go through and glean that out and get down to the facts as to what you want. Again, I was just, with all due respect, I was so thunderstruck by no mention of the university. There's some educational institutions that said here, which I think could be that, but I would think something as great as Western Michigan, it would be standing out. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
unique attributes of Kalamazoo would you use to promote the city as a city of opportunity?
Oh, boy. You all have a resource here, aside from burners, that no place in the South has, and that's water. Water is going to be the most important thing Kalamazoo, Michigan has. It is a sales tool, no question about it. Secondly, the tremendous university. That has to be emphasized. That adds something to a community that not many communities can claim. They really can't, and that's important. Thirdly, I think is the attitude of the workforce. With all due respect, I just coming up, and I hope I'm not divulging anything I shouldn't be divulging, sir, but I asked him, I said, your HR director, I said, what do you like about working for the city of Kalamazoo? He said, I love it. And he says, no, I'm serious. And he says, and it's getting better. And that's the attitude coming from HR. Usually from HR, with all due respect, that's when you usually hear all the bad stuff coming from HR. It really is. And that is very, very positive. It certainly is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Commissioner Sanabra?
Thank you. Mr. Monenbeck, diversity certainly includes race and gender, but also personality, life experiences, and backgrounds, among other things. What methods have you used in previous searches to actively recruit a diverse pool of candidates, especially those that possibly would not have otherwise applied?
Yeah, that's a good point. Once we have this developed as to what you are looking for, we don't have just a stack back here of people that we go to every year or every time for searches. But we do know unique people, sir. I was on the ICMA board for 3 years. I've been a professional manager for over 40 years. I've been president of my state association in 2 different states. I have a lot of contacts. Mr. Hollifield, as I mentioned, with his national exposure and counseling work that he does, bringing emerging leaders along. We have a lot of contacts that we make, and as I mentioned about the email blast, he will go out directly to these people that he knows that he thinks will fit this bill, and I will be doing the same thing. Again, it is what's so important, and I hate to keep coming back to it because it sounds like I have nothing more to say, but it's that so important that we find out what is it that you want that is unique, a unique set of characteristics. If it's minority candidates, if it's candidates that have had university town experience, cap and gown experience, if it's you have in your job description here a person that's on top of financial affairs there. Ladies and gentlemen, in this day and time, there are not too many communities that aren't having deficit each year that they have to cover. So a person has to be entrepreneurial. A person has to be involved in economic development and know the background of economic development. A person has to be able to lay out innovative concepts, financial concepts. He or she needs to be wired into the other managers to find out what are the best practices for raising revenues or looking at things a bit differently. Because the state, I don't think the state of Michigan helps you. We don't get any help from the state of Texas. So I think it's really, we're just on our own to come up with innovative ideas. But again, it's that discussion we would have is what's so important. And I put so much emphasis on it because it is very important. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Moore?
How do you identify the potential in people who have not been held at top positions before, such as departmental directors and others?
Let me give you an example. Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. I should have slid it over there too. I was doing a search for a university town. And this was the town I was mentioning a little while ago with the council. It didn't necessarily say we want a person that's been in a university town. I said, well, council, does a person have to have been a manager in another community? Nope. does not have to have been a manager, but has that potential. Well, my gosh, we knew of an assistant manager in a city that was about the same size as this community. And he went in and had that interview face to face with the council and literally just blew them away. He's been there a year and a half right now, and he is going to end up being one of the most successful managers in the state of Texas. So it's people that have the potential that we know of, other people who we contact know of. We're going to do more than just advertise. We're going to be out looking ourselves to encourage people that may not even have thought about applying for the job.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor. So, I think you've answered some pieces of this, but I think you're right that the thing that's most important, I think, for a community, for the council, is finding a great fit for the organization. And there are people out there with the skill sets that, will check the boxes.
Yes, sir.
And so, what do you depend on when you're looking for, that great fit? When you're coming for a community that's brand new, you don't really know Kalamazoo. So what's your process for finding that great fit?
Yeah, I just have to go back and forgive me, I sound like a broken record. But when I sit down with you and you tell me what you feel like is going to be a great fit for Kalamazoo. What do you think a person would be successful that we would bring in here? What would it take to be successful in Kalamazoo? What are the attributes? What are the education? What's the background? Does he or she have to have been a city manager? Could it have been an assistant manager? Could it have been a finance director? A strong public works director? Someone from the media? Lord behold, I wonder about that. But again, what are some of the things that you think would be? And then if we can mold that, sir, and I'll tell you, you'll know it when that person is sitting here interviewing the council. It will strike. I was interviewing for a police chief one time. I was trying to hire a police chief. I had 5 finalists. I was going through the first one. He was from a large city, and it was looking bad. It was really looking bad. And this very last one, towards the end of the day, it was like a ray of sunshine came right down. It was the chemistry. It was the fit. You can tell it when it happens. You know when it happens. You can feel it in your, say gut, but that's probably doesn't sound very good. You know when it happens, sir. When that chemistry is there and alive. That's what it takes. And that chemistry has to be nurtured beyond the time the person is hired. Because there will be, with all due respect, new commissioners coming and going, new staff people coming and going. That person's got to be in a position to adapt to that. That person's got to be in a position to adapt to commissioners coming on that want to go in different directions, as a majority of the body of them. It's got new ideas, new ways of doing things. And chemistry has to be something that person can adapt to.
Okay. Describe for us the process you use to vet the candidates you present to us.
Great question. Actually, sir, it starts when we come up with our original about 25 or if we have about 45 or 50 is what we would expect to get. This becomes a team effort. This isn't the headhunter or the search firm making these decisions. You will narrow that down to about 20 people. Those 20 people then will respond to about 5 or 6 questions that are important to this commission. You will see right off the top their writing style, how they write, how they respond to questions. We'll get that down to about 12 people after that. They will do online video interviews of 6 or 7 questions. Those interviews will be sent directly to you, nonstop to you. You'll be able to review how they organize their thoughts, what their thought process is, how they respond to those questions. Eventually, we'll get that down to probably 5 or 6 one of the most important exercises that we have done on a number of occasions, it depends on the commission, depends on the commission, but we actually have them put together their 6-month plan if they were appointed city manager. We give them y'all's phone numbers, they contact you individually, talk about Kalamazoo's goals, what are the important things from the commission's point of view. We give them numbers of the key staff. They contact the key staff, all done by telephone. They contact the key staff to say, hey, we understand these are the goals, now what's really going on? They put that plan together, and you can tell very, very quickly how much work they've done on developing that, because it's the input of the commission, it's the input of the staff, and if you want, even input of people out in the community, maybe the school superintendent or something like that. So you have, as you're going through this process, before you even get to the point of the interview, you have a lot of information. We, in the meantime, will be doing all these media searches as we go through the process. Coming down to the finalists, we do a very detailed investigative background, plus we go directly to the people that we've asked them to give as references. And sir, with all due respect, we do not have a clerk that checks those references. If this is the city that I'm working for, I check those references. And those references are usually 15 to 18 per applicant. And those are all checked out to really see. And you can say, well, Muhlenbeck, why in the world, if this person had a bad experience with this council, why would you want to know about that? And I said, I want to know about that because I want you to know about that. So again, there is not a surprise at the last minute or even as we're going through the process.
That seems like a lot of work. Do they do that much work? I mean, if you're going to ask commissioners, call staff, and then write up a 6-month plan.
That's what they will be doing, sir.
And your experience is that people have done that.
Yes, sir. No, that's an option. That's an option. If you don't want to do that, we've had other cities that have said, bring the 5 finalists in, and we'll have a community reception. We'd like to see how they interact socially with the community. And you invite key staff there to have that and get input that way. To me, this other exercise, with all due respect, is you're getting free consulting help. You are getting free consulting help from a number of people that may be of some real benefit to the city of Kalamazoo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, what have you found works best to get the community involved in the search process?
Again, I think up front, to identify who you think it'd be important for us to talk to. I'm going up to a community in the middle of July where I will do the interviewing one day and then there will be a community meeting that evening. It's just wide open to the community to come in and tell us what they want in this particular position that I'm recruiting for. So I think you could go either way on that, but I think it's so important to get them involved in the front end. I really do. And it builds relationships between the commissioners and the community. And my gosh, if I'm asked what I think the city manager should be in the community, I feel pretty proud of that. I really would, that my city would think enough of me to ask me to do that. Does that help at all? Thank you.
Number 10 was pretty much answered, wasn't it? Right? So do I get to do number 11? If you were selected to conduct this search, how soon would you be able to start, and what would be your first steps?
The very first step, and this is the request that we would make of the city to provide us with information regarding the community and information that will be going into the brochure. This will be information that we would need to start before we come in and do our interviews with the commissioners, with the staff, and with anyone in the community. This is information that we would need right off the top. Once we have that, then we are able then to pull together the information, what we would call our old brochure that would contain, we use this brochure as a real sales promotion for the city of Kalamazoo. This will have some very nice pictures on it, and forgive me, I don't recall the last one that was done here. I did not know when it was done. But this would be a promotional brochure that would go out. Anyone on the internet could pull that up and take a look at it and see just exactly what the city of Kalamazoo is and what they are looking for. That would be the first steps that we would be taking.
The first part of it was, when would you be able to start?
As soon as the contract is signed, we would start providing the request for the information. We would be getting with whoever your contact is here with the city as to who's going to be coordinating this. If it continues to be HR, we would contact HR. They would be setting up these meetings. I would come back in. If it takes 2 days or 3 days to do those interviews, those would be done. And they're probably 30 to 45 minutes with staff, probably up to an hour with individual council people. And they never get old. They never get old. I always learn so much. I really do.
I'm gonna,
Yes, sir.
do a follow-up to that. So let's say you're selected, we sign the contract on Wednesday afternoon. You start your information request, we get you, so would your information request come in on Thursday? And if we get it to you by Monday, are you prepared to come to the community on Wednesday?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, just stay away from the middle of July, the 15th to the 17th, because I'm doing one in a community then. But aside from that, I can move that quick, Mr. Mayor. I sure can. You're just
I'm sorry.
You're just being too definitive, sir.
They smack me when I'm not.
Okay, all right.
It happens a lot.
All right, sir.
Mr. Sinatra.
Thank you. Mr. Mellenbeck, I'm asking you a recurrent question. The mayor, I talked to the mayor earlier about this. During the last go-around, when we interviewed the 5 finalists for city manager,
Yes, sir.
the day of the interview, we still had not had criminal background checks or other checks completed. Can you address that? How would you react to that? How would you?
We won't do the interviews.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
This is a question related specifically to Michigan, and you'd have to remind me about this when you've done a search in Michigan.
Have not, sir. Have not.
So that said, do you have any opinion about what candidate views might be of Michigan, as from an outsider's perspective in terms of economic or political, landscape?
Excellent point. Excellent point. That was one of the questions I was hoping I would not receive this evening. I think what has been so positive, let me start off that way, has been this Michigan Pure advertising that's been on television. I think that is so positive that I think it's going to make people do a lot of thinking. But when you've got your major city with the financial problems it has, if they can just, if we can just get with them and share them that there is a difference in this state between that major community and Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, and in other communities, we think we can make a difference. We really do. I think it is going to be something that we're going to have to work on. I really do. Not making any apologies at all. We are going to have to work on it.
Yes, thank you. Have you ever had a search go badly? And if so, what happened? And how did you fix it?
Oh, ma'am, I haven't.
You haven't?
Bless you. I really have not. I was even thinking about others in the firm. Excuse me. I did have one. Yes, it was quite a small community where the mayor did not want a city manager. he, in all due respect, wanted to be city manager. But it was only through this was a council, wasn't a commission, that only through the pushing of the council did we make it through that process. But it was really, it was really a struggle. But I've never had one go bad, no, ma'am, I sure have. Yes, ma'am.
They wouldn't let me apply for the job.
Is that chemistry, Mayor?
Actually, I don't want to work for them.
We have high standards.
Mr. Mulebach,
Yes, sir.
most of your the SGR's work has been in Texas and the Southwest.
Yes, sir.
And you said you just did one in Washington.
Started over a little over a year and a half ago. Yes, sir. Mhm.
Do you anticipate a problem doing the recruiting around Michigan?
No, sir. And I'll say this. I have to go back to that website, sir. That website is used by managers in every state. That job board is what is so important. They don't care if it's Texas or Alabama or California. They're just looking for the information. We post on that job site jobs that we're not even going after, that we're not even doing. It's to give them the facts and the basis of all of the jobs that are available out there. So I think that is really what is so important. I do not see that as a problem. We even kicked it around ourselves as, how about going to Washington State? You know, they had a recruiter up there that just did Washington cities, and I mean, had quite a lock on Washington cities. And the council in this case really, I'll hurry along. I'm sorry. And the council, with all due respect, really took a risk and hired this firm. So much of our work is all done over the internet, sir. It sure is.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions, Commissioners? I think we exhausted all our questions.
I really credit y'all for going through, I guess, 5 of these today. You're really to be commended for the willpower on that, Your Honor.
Well, this is what we do.
Okay, sir.
And welcome back to Kalamazoo. We do
Yeah.
appreciate your interest, especially a second time in moving this search forward. We really do.
All right, sir. Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
I spoke again to HR. I was going to go back to the hotel. I've got a 5 o'clock flight out of here tomorrow morning. I guess I could just stay in touch with you, sir, and
Sure.
just find out if that'd be satisfactory.
You'll probably hear from Ellen
We-
tonight.
We may or may not
Yes, sir.
deliberate tonight.
All right,
It's
sir.
going to be up to the body, so it may or may not.
Well, this has been a great experience, and I don't say that just every time I talk to a governing body. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank
Really
you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you very much.
We have Sean Benzie.
There we
I refer to
go.
myself as Colin 2.0. Bob Sinobro, Sean Benzie, nice to meet you.
Barb Miller, nice to meet you.
Sean Benzie, nice to meet you.
Sean, this is Sean.
Nice to meet you.
You sure?
Sean, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Yes, Sean. Sean Benzie, nice to meet you. Thank you. I have some materials I'd like to pass out as well.
Yeah, sure.
While you're doing that, Mr. Benzinger, we want to thank you for coming in and for your firm having a second interest in doing this work for us. Interesting folks here. So welcome to Kalamazoo. And, as you know, that all the firms get a 10-minute opening to introduce themselves to us. I'll ask that you cover one thing for sure in that opening, and that is you can give us a little information about how your firm, how you see your firm as, what's the word I was looking for? What distinguishes you from other firms?
Yes, that's two each. Okay, absolutely, Mayor.
What we'll have is that you'll have a round robin sort of question and answers. This time I think we start with Commissioner Sinobro, and we'll just go around and sort of focus to let you know, and I'll have the first question.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you again for this opportunity, by the way. It is a privilege to be here in front of you, and I know that your time is very valuable. So thank you for letting us come again. To start off with, I'm sure that my dad, frankly, covered a lot of this when he was here the first time. What I'm planning on doing is kind of doing a cursory overview of the actual process that we use. I imagine you've heard a lot of it from different search firms, but just a cursory overview of what we do, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about what sets us apart and what makes Collin Benzinger & Associates, I believe, ultimately the right choice. So for starters, when we're getting to know a community and when we're performing a recruitment for the community, frankly, our goal from the beginning is to gather as much information about you as we can. Each community kind of has its own unique individual character, and I think that one of the pitfalls that people fall into sometimes is they kind of get into an assembly line mentality when they're doing searches. And one of the keys that we really recognize is important to having a successful search is really identifying the unique characteristics of every community. And so what we do is when we are contracted to perform a search, the first thing we do is meet with each and every one of the commissioners, have a one-on-one interview with you, and then essentially we go out to the community, we meet with key stakeholders, we meet with key staff members, and ultimately we just try and get to know as much information as humanly possible about Kalamazoo. That way, when we're talking with candidates, we can inform them of the opportunities, the different facets of the job, and the challenges, because it's important to relay that information to candidates. Once we have that information, we compose a recruitment brochure. You have examples in front of you. I included some that were city managers, others that were different department level for director positions, just so you can kind of see a little bit of what we do. But ultimately, the recruitment brochure is a 7 or 8 page profile on a city. And what it's designed to do is give each candidate enough information so that they can take a few minutes, look at the recruitment brochure, and then have enough information to decide, is this the right spot for me? It's basically everything a candidate wants to know in about 7 or 8 pages. And so we then take this brochure, and as part of our outreach effort, we do a couple different things. First and foremost, we email it out to our database of about 7,400 municipal management professionals. This contains a significant number of city and county managers who are in the market, and who, even if they're not in the market, they know people who are in the market. And so if they receive the email, they can look at the opportunity, and then they can forward it to someone who they know might be a good fit with your city. In addition to the email outreach, we advertise in the different professional organizations, ICMA, and so forth, ICMA. And then what we do is we then contact the people that, based on the information that we've gathered about the city, we then contact people directly that we think would be a good fit with the city of Kalamazoo. And that way we're assured of getting as wide an outreach as possible with the different candidates to make sure this job is advertised to everybody who might have an interest in it. After we advertise, we go into basically a narrowing process. First of all, we send you the resumes of everybody who's applied so you can see them for yourselves. But we don't select finalists until we do background checks on them. A resume never crosses your desk as a finalist until we've done a thorough check. We know that we know everything that there is to know about a candidate, and that you know everything there is to know about a candidate. And so, essentially, once we get all the resumes, we narrow it down roughly to the top, somewhere between 20 to 15 normally, depending on how many people we feel are qualified. And we conduct phone interviews with them. Then we narrow it roughly down to the top 10 or so. And then when we have the top 10, we conduct background checks including criminal, civil, motor vehicle, bankruptcy. We also go into the internet archives of the places where they used to work. And so that way, if the newspapers reported something, we know about it. This is important because a lot of times there are complaints or issues that don't get into an official record, but obviously if there's a scandal or a problem, the newspaper is going to know about it, and so we want to know about it before we recommend the candidate to you. And so we go into the newspaper archives, then we do reference checks. One of the big things about reference checks is we make sure that we don't just talk to the 5 people that the candidate recommends to us, who could obviously be their 5 best friends. We want to make sure that we talk to the people that would have knowledge of this candidate and have knowledge of his or her strengths and his or her weaknesses, so that we are fully informed as a search firm and we know everything that there is to know before we recommend them to you. Based on our background checks, we then take about between 6 to 10 finalists, depending on how many we feel are qualified, and we send them all the information to you so you can look at the background check and see everything that we found, and then you pick the finalists that you want to interview. What we then decide is, the interview process is really interesting because realistically you're picking a person who you've probably never met before, and you're entrusting them with the future of your home, your city, and so that's not a small deal. And you don't have a lot of information on this person to start off with from previous experience. And so our goal as a search firm is to give you as much information as possible up front through the background checks and then through the interview process so that you can make an informed decision. Because ultimately, you want to know as much about this person as you can before you entrust them with your city.